Chapter 96. Happy play? Everyone's mouth twitched as they looked at the 3 bloodied corpses on the ground. 3 lives were on the line here. Happy play? How magnanimous must you be? Now Dong Qianling, Chen Wanfeng, Xia Bingchuan and even Shui Yuehan and Fu Yuanshan knew that things had gotten out of hand. It was not going to be easy to clean up now. Dong Qianling and the rest were relatively naive. If things got out of hand, so be it. I have my family to clean up after me anyway. Shui Yuehan and Fu Yuanshan, on the other hand, were confused. How could it have gotten out of hand all of a sudden? We were only forcing Yun Zuyu. We had more tricks up our sleeves, we had a more detailed plan. We hadn't even started yet. Now that things had gotten out of hand, what could they do? For a moment they looked at this young Master Yun who had popped out of nowhere. Of course, both of them did not forget to notice that this young Master Yun's cultivation base was very low. Not even at the 3rd peak? Perhaps he was only at the 3rd peak? He was just a small fry. Actually, I really don't understand. Yun Yang said in a pained tone, I think everyone here is a reputable figure. I was just about to watch the show, but in the blink of an eye, someone's been killed. Is this necessary? Is this necessary? Xia Bingchuan's ear was pierced and blood was dripping from it. Frustrated, he said, What are you trying to say? Can't you be more straightforward? Yun Yang stopped Dong Qianling's outburst and said sincerely, Actually, I don't have the right to speak in this matter, but since it has come to this, we have to settle it. Therefore this young brother is shameless enough to be the peacemaker. Of course, if young masters Sir Shui and Keeper Fu think that I'm not qualified, this lowly one shall step back. The few of them did not wish for the matter to continue. Shui Yuehan and Fu Guanshan had other important tasks. How could they allow the situation to worsen? Chen Wanfeng, Xia Bingchuan and the rest felt that they had gained the upper hand. 3 of the other party had died while they were only slightly injured. Naturally, they wanted to stop while they were ahead. As Yun Yang said so, despite the disdain on everyone's faces, they did not say anything, silently acknowledging Yun Yang's identity as the peacemaker. This is very normal. The peacemaker, young Master Yun Yang, said earnestly, It's actually a battle of pride. I have to say something about Sir Shui and Keeper Fu here. She's a woman and she doesn't like to drink, yet you 2 men had to propose a toast. Forget it, let's not talk about it. Miss Yun is a brother that she has just acknowledged. Drinking a cup of wine is the same as drinking with family. Why are you all so jealous? Really? Yun Yang shook his head and sighed, Still, young Master Dong, you have a fiery temper, jumping up just like that. How could you be so impulsive? If you do this, it will be difficult for your sister as well. How will she make a living in Tiantang City in the future? You can't be here every day. That's why I said that before you do anything, you don't think it through. Dong Qianling looked ashamed. Sister Yu, it's my fault. I've caused you trouble. Yun Zuyu forced a smile and said, A younger brother's trouble will never be trouble to an elder sister. Dong Qianling felt even more ashamed as he heaved a long sigh. Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan looked at Dong Qianling in surprise. What's wrong with this B*TCH today? He actually admitted his mistake after being criticized once. *CK. Was this really Dong Qianling? And Sir Shui and Keeper Fu came to force the sister that I have just acknowledged to drink? Yun Yang spoke sincerely and sincerely, Honestly, if it were me, I would find it hard to take it as well. This is too much of a slap in the face. So a few words of quarrel turned into 3 lives. Yun Yang was speechless. Honestly, I didn't even see clearly how these 3 people died. The others, including Shui Yuehan who had the highest cultivation base among them, nodded as well. Yes, how did these 3 people die? Why didn't I see it? Was it so chaotic just now? But it has to be solved once it's happened. With everyone's identity and status, if you still have to wait for the official's verdict, it's a little degrading. Yun Yang's words were right on everyone's mind. Everyone went in after the official's verdict. How could this be? Besides, it will severely affect Cirrus House's reputation. With the official's intervention, even if we don't close down, it's certain that we will have to close down for a few months just for the sake of these 3 lives. Yun Yang sighed. Everyone nodded in agreement. Dong Qianling nodded in agreement. I can't implicate the sister that I have just acknowledged to lose her business and earn no money. She had just acknowledged me as her younger brother, and now this younger brother of mine has ruined her sister's shop that has been raking in money for years. Who would dare to be friends with Dong Qianling in the future? I'm King called Dong Qianling, but I'm not a jinx. Shui Yuehan and Fu Guanshan nodded in agreement. We still have a mission in Cirrus House. If it closes down, how can we complete it? So I think, why don't we just let it go? Yun Yang said arrogantly. Shui Yuehan and Fu Guansan looked like they had just eaten shit. 3 of us have died. Just let it go? That won't do. Xia Bingchuan gritted his teeth and twisted his neck. My ear was pierced by someone, Dong Tianling retorted angrily. There's a hole in your ear, not under your stomach? What are you yelling for? Xia Bingchuan was furious. Dong Tianling, do you still have a conscience? I'm doing this to help you. Both of you, listen to me. Yun Yang quickly mediated. What I mean is, I think this is how we should handle it. Is that all right? 3 dead people. This incident is young Master Dong Tianling's side after all. Cough, I don't know what to say. Their people are dead anyway, they must have suffered a loss. It's only right that young Master Dong should be more arrogant. What do you think, young Master Dong? Dong Tianling agreed with what Yun Yang said and believed that Yun Yang would never stand on someone else's side. He nodded readily and said, arrogant, no problem. His words infuriated Shui Yuehan and Fu Guansan. You have killed our people and you still dare to be arrogant? How about this? Yun Yang said, young Master Dong, pay for the 3 dead people. 100,000 silver taels for each of them. Add a generous pension and give it to their families. What do you think? Dong Tianling rolled his eyes and said, humph. Yun Yang turned to ask Shui Yuehan, does Sir Shui mean? Is this all right? Shui Yuehan gritted his teeth and said after a long while, as long as young Master Dong can pay, both of us have nothing to say. Then what does Keeper Fu think? Yun Yang turned to ask Fu Guansan. Fu Guansan was fuming but he dared not delay the important matter. I have no objections as well. That's easy. Yun Yang said, as for young Master Xia's injuries, young Master Dong Tianling will compensate 100,000 silver taels and treat his injuries. How about that? Xia Bingchuan snorted and said, forget about me. Yun Yang coughed and said, yes, you brothers can discuss it among yourselves. Everyone look, isn't this a happy ending? A happy ending? Shui Yuehan and Fu Guansan repeated the words, feeling that this could be called a happy ending? We've suffered a belly full of anger and 3 people have died. Are you all happy with us? This is simply ridiculous. Quickly clean up. Yun Yang began to command, we still need to drink later. Don't delay our business. Come, everyone, let's smile at each other and bury the hatchet. From now on, there will be another story to tell in Tiantang City, smile at each other and bury the hatchet. This was impossible. Shui Yuehan, Fu Guansan, and the others felt ashamed as they took the silver taels and left in a huff. Dong Tianling was embarrassed as well, feeling that he had caused great trouble for his new sister and had to take his leave as well. Yun Zuyu tried her best to keep him. What are you talking about, younger brother? Dong Tianling insisted on leaving 1,000,000 silver taels as compensation for Cirrus House's loss, but Yun Zuyu refused to accept it. As the 2 of them pushed and shoved, Yun Zuyu's eyes finally reddened. Are you looking down on this sister? You stood up for me and almost got yourself killed. Does this sister still want to accept your silver taels? Forget it, if you really want to give it to me, I'll accept it. However, from now on, don't call me sister anymore. Although Dong Tianling had a bad temper, he was someone who was amenable to coaxing but not coercion. He quickly kept the silver taels and said, Sister Yu, this young brother is wrong. Humph? Yun Zuyu said, since you know you're wrong, don't do this again. This sister is holding a banquet today to thank younger brother and the 2 young masters. Yun Yang said, since there's nothing else, I shall leave as well. Yun Zuyu said, it's all thanks to young Master Yun today. How can young Master Yun leave? Why don't you keep the guests company? Yin Yang laughed. I have something to do at home. Besides, sister, you didn't thank me just now. Of course I should thank you. Yun Zuyu smiled. Actually, if you're thanking me, why don't you give me some silver taels? Our family is tight on funds during this period of time. Yun Yang scratched his head and secretly winked at her. Yun Zuyu understood immediately. Of course that's not a problem. Yun Yang insisted on leaving. Yun Zuyu tried to persuade him to stay but failed. She chased after him out of the door and took a silver tael worth 50,000 silver taels. Young Master Yun, it's all thanks to you today. This is a small token of my gratitude, please accept it. Yun Yang refused to accept it, but Yun Zuyu was almost crying as she spoke. Finally, Yun Yang left with the 50,000 silver taels. Under the watchful eyes of the public, there were many who were extremely envious of him. Look at young Master Yun. Not only did he not spend a single cent on a trip to the brothel, he had actually earned 50,000 silver taels. However, in the eyes of those who were observant, Yun Yang had put in a lot of effort but did not stay for a meal. He had taken the silver taels and left. It was not a small amount. As for Dong Tianling and the others, they stayed at Sira's house while Yun Zuyu entertained them. The difference in closeness and distance was obvious, but it was not. It was also very obvious. It was extremely confusing. From the beginning to the end, Yun Yang did not seem to have anything to do with it. He was only a mediator. If Yun Yang was really, why would he come to mediate at such a crucial moment? Looking at Yun Yang's back as he left, many of them were deep in thought. However, Dong Tianling and the two young masters of spring and summer. Could Sira's house belong to the four noble families of spring, summer, autumn, and winter? This had to be investigated. They did not believe that they would acknowledge each other as siblings the moment they met. Chapter 97. Once the incident at Sira's house had been exposed, Yun Yang had basically cleared himself of suspicion. In addition, an endless source of trouble had followed Dong Tianling and the young masters of the spring and summer families. Yun Yang felt that he had done a flawless job in this matter. Especially with Yun Zuyu's cooperation, it was even more flawless. From the beginning to the end, both sides had to be grateful to young Master Yun Yang. If it had not been for him, things would have gotten out of hand today, in the night. Yun Yang walked on the road feeling good. He was muttering a few names. Shui Yuehan Fu Guansan. Duck voice, keeper me? Yun Yang hummed in his heart. Shui Yuehan is on good terms with Han Wufei. For Season's Tower, perhaps your plan is flawless and a trap has fallen. However, your father is already out of his shell. What's left is for you to fight the four noble families. What's more, so many of you are exposed in front of me. How should I make use of this opportunity? Yun Yang pondered with a frown as he walked. What kind of force should he use? The residence of Yun was right in front of him. Yun Yang had come out alone for his own plan. After all, he and Dong Tianling had not brought any guards with them. It would be more appropriate to let Popinjay Dong do it himself. If he had brought Lao Mei or Fang Mafei, it would be the guards who would strike first. Then things would be different. Just as Yun Yang was deep in thought, a sudden sense of danger rose within him. A sharp, murderous aura appeared behind him, stabbing towards his heart from the back in this dimly lit street. The assassination this time was simply without any warning. It was so close. At that moment, Yun Yang felt goosebumps all over his body. A sense of death rose within him. He twisted his body with all his might, channeling the fog of cloud conjuration with all his might. Just as his chest began to turn into fog, poof, the tip of a shining saber had already pierced through Yun Yang's right chest. Yun Yang roared as he charged forward 170 feet like a bolt of lightning. In the air, he twisted his body with all his might, his back hitting the residence of Yun's door with a loud bang. As he charged forward, the tip of the saber was forcefully pulled out from his chest. In the residence of Yun, Fang Mafei bellowed angrily, "Who is it?" Fang Mafei and Lao Mei appeared on top of the wall almost at the same time. Behind him, an illusory shadow was about to follow up with another slash, but Fang Mafei and Lao Mei had already rushed over with a cry, "Young master!" The illusory figure swayed and coldly snorted, "Count yourself lucky." His voice was very low. Yun Yang tried his best to widen his eyes amidst the excruciating pain, only to see a blurry silhouette turning to leave. With just one step, the silhouette melted into the night. Yun Yang's last conscious thought was that the silhouette seemed rather familiar. Then boundless darkness surged forth. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fainted. When Yun Yang woke up, he was already in his room. Two streams of pure yuan qi, one in front of the other, continuously poured into his body. It was Fang Mafei and Lao Mei using mystical qi to heal his injuries. There was a faint taste of medicine in his mouth. Yun Yang opened his eyes slowly and exhaled, asking weakly, "What time is it now?" "It's almost midnight?" Lao Mei was sweating profusely, his face pale, his mystical qi exhausted. He said, "Young master, don't talk, it's more important to heal your injuries first." Behind him, Fang Mafei's voice was more relaxed, his tone solemn as he said, "Young master is really lucky this time. This is a penetrating wound going straight through your chest from your back. But it's extremely coincidental, passing through the gaps of your internal organs. Otherwise this time it would really be." Lao Mei was smiling as well. "That's right, young master is lucky. But this damned assassin stab is too coincidental. It went right through the gaps of your internal organs." Really, when both of them saw Yun Yang, they were almost scared out of their wits. There was a gaping hole in his chest and back, blood gushing out. This was a fatal wound. Who knew that his internal organs would not be damaged at all after a checkup? Both of them felt that it was a blessing from the gods. Such a thing might not even happen once in 1,000 years in the entire Tianshan continent. It was too surreal. Both of them did not even know that there was a gap between the internal organs that went from his back to his chest. Yin-Yang was touched. Luckily, his cultivation method had reached the third stage and he could turn his chest cavity into nothingness in an instant. That was how he had managed to avoid this fatal blow. Otherwise, he would have been dead meat this time. He took a deep breath and said weakly, "Stop your cultivation. I can mobilize my own mystical chi now." "All right." Both of them agreed. Although external mystical chi was powerful and could perhaps save one's life, it was still the mystical chi that came from within one's body that was more effective in self-healing. Both of them were experts in this field, so they naturally knew this very well. Yun-Yang controlled his mystical chi and slowly withdrew. He could clearly feel a surge of pure life force rising from his dantian. In the deific consciousness space, Emmy waved its tendrils anxiously, rolling up balls of green air of vitality and tossing them out, only to be pulled back angrily. It wriggled, and if it could speak, it would have been squealing anxiously. Then Emmy's tendrils writhed excitedly, sending out the accumulated air of vitality. Yun-Yang was awake. Yun-Yang had not woken up, so Emmy could only send air of vitality into his meridians, allowing the essence of life to flow naturally along his meridians to the injured area. Of course, the efficiency was slow. When Yun-Yang woke up, he had his own consciousness and could direct an unlimited amount of air of vitality to mend his wounds. This was a completely different effect. Yun-Yang cultivated weakly, panting with difficulty. As the mystical chi in his body was mobilized and Emmy's air of vitality entered, Yun-Yang's complexion slowly recovered. Gradually, a faint white mist rose from his body. It lingered. Slowly, Yun-Yang's entire body seemed to be in a steamer as the mist engulfed him completely. "There's no more danger now?" Fang Mafei heaved a sigh of relief. Lao Mei held his breath, watching Yun-Yang's complexion as his wounds slowly stopped bleeding. Slowly, his breathing became heavier as well. Finally, he straightened his back and wiped away his sweat. That was close. Then both of them looked at each other. Who was the one who assassinated Yun-Yang? Assassinating the young marquis of the residence of Yun right in front of the residence of Yun. That was some guts he had. Besides, it was impossible to guard against such a mysterious and terrifying enemy hiding in the dark. If it were to happen again, would Yun-Yang still have such good luck? Old Fang look. Lao Mei's expression was somber. You can see it too. Fang Mafei pondered and said, "This person's cultivation base is not below mine. At least it's the 7th peak. And this person's hatred towards young master runs deep." Lao Mei said, "His stab was as quick as lightning, but such an expert should be able to control his strength. He could have kept the tip of the blade from protruding out of his chest and only left it in his chest. That would have caused young master more pain, and it would have been more difficult to determine the extent of his injury. However, in order to ensure his death, he pierced through the wound directly." That's right. The moment the blade entered his body, the mystical chi that was attached to it began to expand and explode outwards. However, strangely enough, young master's internal organs were not harmed. However, that unique feminine power and demonic aura is still there. Fang Mafei's expression was grim. "If it were you or me, we would have been dead by now." However, young master's cultivation method is rather mystical. This kind of sinister cultivation method does not cause any harm to his body. No matter who this person is, he's a powerful enemy. We need to be more vigilant in the future. Fang Mafei's expression was grim. To let young master be assassinated in front of his own house, it's really embarrassing. Lao Mei nodded ferociously. The sky was already bright. Yun-Yang exhaled softly and tried to move his body to get off the bed. He felt his body sway and a wave of dizziness hit him, almost causing him to fall to the ground. Too much blood loss. Yun-Yang quickly assessed the condition of his body. His basic chi is damaged. Other than that, I'm fine. Yun-Yang felt a lingering fear. If he had not sensed it in advance and swiftly executed Supreme Cloud's mantra to vaporize his chest, he would have been a dead man by now. However, the speed of the stab was extremely fast. With a quick thought and his body vaporizing, his chest had still been pierced through. If he had waited until he had completely vaporized, he would not have been injured. To achieve that, I must reach the 4th stage of the fog of cloud conjuration. Yun-Yang exhaled, channeling his energy to hasten the healing of his wound. After a long while, he finally took a step out of the room. Step by step, he felt the cool breeze blowing against his face. It felt like a lifetime had passed. His life had been spared. "Young master, why did you come out?" Fang Mafei was shocked. Yun-Yang's face was pale. "It's nothing, it's not a serious injury. Walking out will help with the recovery." Not a serious injury? Fang Mafei swallowed the words he wanted to say. If it had been someone else, they would have been reincarnated by now. You actually don't even consider a serious injury? I'm speechless as well. Although Yunyang said so, he knew in his heart that the injury he had suffered this time was not a light one. He might not even be able to recover completely even after 10 days. He had actually suffered such a serious injury at this crucial moment when he was about to carry out his plan. Should the plan be delayed? Yunyang's face was dark. Young master, this assassination. Fang Mafei asked tentatively, do you have any clues about the murderer? A cold glint flashed across Yunyang's eyes. The silhouette of the person's back appeared in his mind once again. A familiar silhouette. He had definitely seen this person before. However, he had never experienced such a sinister aura. Where had he seen this person before? Besides, he had such a deep hatred for him. When had he offended such a person? Chapter 98. Was there a clue? As Fang Mafei finished his question, he saw Yunyang's expression sink, growing more and more gloomy. There's a clue. Yunyang gritted his teeth and took a deep breath, saying thoughtfully, when I was ambushed from behind, I charged forward immediately to escape the blade and turned around in the air with all my might. I wanted to see what this person looked like. Even if I die for sure after this slash, I still want to turn around and see whose hands I will die in. Being killed from behind is my humiliation. Facing death head-on is the backbone of a man. Yunyang said faintly. Although I didn't see this person's face with my last glance, I saw this person's back. Yunyang said, although this person's body melted into the night fog, that back felt very familiar to me. Familiar? Fang Mafei frowned. Very familiar. Yunyang frowned as he thought seriously. I must have seen this person during this period of time and I must have offended this person. When and who were they? Yunyang racked his brain. In his mind, all the people he had met in the past month flashed through his mind like a flashing lantern. He had not made any friends during this period of time. He had offended people all along, including Dong Tianling. For now, Yunyang was only using him. Besides, Yunyang had no intention of making friends. I don't want to have new friends. Yunyang had a stubborn obsession in his heart. I don't want anyone to replace your positions in my heart. He was deep in thought. Everything that had happened during this period of time had been repeated in his mind more than once. Every character was constantly comparing the back view of that figure. Who was it? All of a sudden, Yunyang was shocked. His face suddenly turned deathly pale. Fang Mafei had been watching his expression. Suddenly his spirit jolted. Young master, you remember now? Yunyang sucked in a deep breath and said, this person is a little strange. I can't be sure. Fang Mafei's eyes glinted. Who is it? Yunyang hesitated for a long time before he finally shook his head and said, I'll tell you when I'm sure. Fang Mafei was dumbfounded. Looking at Yunyang's expression, he had obviously found this person, but why was he unwilling to say it? Indeed, Yunyang knew who the silhouette belonged to. But it was precisely because he knew and confirmed it that he felt a wave of disbelief. How could it be him? A slap to the face. A loud sound rang out. A defenseless body was sent flying from the ground. 7 or 8 teeth flew out of his mouth. Half of his gums were almost knocked out. Then he rushed forward and started punching and kicking. The one in charge of purchasing in the inner palace, the one he saw at the Jade Farm, Eunuch Wu. Eunuch Wu who liked men. Eunuch Wu who was almost slapped to death by him. At that moment, Yunyang felt as if the world had been flipped upside down. Was it possible for such an expert to be slapped to such a state by him? He didn't even retaliate when he was humiliated in front of everyone? When he walked out of the Jade Farm, he had forgotten about him. What was the point of remembering such a cowardly eunuch who didn't have the slightest bit of martial prowess? But now, the figure that was gradually dissipating in the night fog actually overlapped with the figure that was beaten up like a dog. Yunyang checked again carefully, comparing himself to the silhouette from all directions. In the end, Yunyang heaved a long sigh towards the sky. I've indeed underestimated the heroes of this world. I've indeed underestimated what kind of performance a person needs when he's enduring humiliation. I've indeed been too careless. Fang Mafei asked in confusion, Young master, what are you talking about? A gentle smile hung on Yunyang's face. What I'm saying is, it's not unjust for me to be injured this time. Even if I've really been assassinated this time, I deserve to die because of this person's attack. There's no injustice at all. Underestimating the enemy is the way to death. Yunyang heaved a soft sigh of relief and murmured, From today onwards, I won't underestimate anyone in this world anymore. Anyone? Yun Yang's tone was heavy as he enunciated the last 3 words. Fang Mafei was puzzled. Why did young master say this? He felt that since he had followed Yun Yang he had always been by his side, but he still felt that Yun Yang was like a cloud of mystery. He could not see clearly. He could not even get close. In addition, Yun Yang should have a huge force in his hands, but it had always been hidden and no one could see it. Yun Yang had never underestimated any enemy. Yun Yang had always been meticulous with every step he took. Sometimes he could even be described as scheming. Today Yun Yang's words of self-reflection had shocked Fang Mafei. Yes, with Yun Yang's current state of mind, his careful and meticulous steps, those who he thought were extremely cautious, still needed to reflect on themselves. Fang Mafei suddenly felt that with his temper, he was still alive after roaming the martial world for so many years. It was truly *King blessing from the heavens, a great stroke of luck. Yun Yang sat there for the entire day without stepping out. He had used all sorts of healing medicine and Emmy's continuous supply of air of vitality. Yun Yang had used them as well. It was only until night time that he had finally recovered half of his strength. However, he immediately laid down again. No matter who comes, just say that I've been assassinated and am bedridden. I can't meet anyone. Yun Yang's order baffled Fang Mafei and Lao Mei. You didn't lie down when you should have, you got up and walked around, now that you had finally recovered a little, you immediately lay down again. What kind of logic was this? On the same night, Yun Yang held the 9 heavens dictum in his hand and an order was sent out soundlessly. Old Marshal Qiu Jianhan had been feeling humiliated for the past few days. How could something like this happen in his own home? It was utterly humiliating. The old marshal could feel his face burning even when he was drinking tea. Such a ridiculous thing had actually happened in his own home, to forcefully matchmake the widow of the national hero, the 9 Supremes? This was simply, the old marshal heaved a long sigh. There had been no news from the 9 heavens dictum these past few days. This made the old marshal even more anxious. Could those fellows be angry? Are you completely disappointed? The old marshal could not sleep for the next few days. Putting himself in their shoes, if it were him, he would probably not forgive them as well. It was on this very night. Qiu Jianhan paced around the pergola, his mind heavy. Suddenly there was movement again. Don't panic. Qiu Jianhan was overjoyed. Looking at the familiar parcel that had landed in front of him, the old marshal was almost moved to tears of joy. Moreover, the parcel this time was different from the previous one. Instead, there was a vivid drawing of a white cloud. The white cloud gave the old marshal a jolt. The soul of the 9 Supremes, Supreme Cloud's dictum. Everyone in the world knew that although the leader of the 9 Supremes was Supreme Earth, the one who could truly command the 9 Supremes and make the most important decisions was the youngest of the 9 Supremes, Supreme Cloud. Now, in front of old Marshal Qiu was Supreme Cloud's parcel. This meant that the item inside was sent by Supreme Cloud's men. It could also be said that it was sent by Supreme Cloud himself. Old Marshal Qiu grabbed the parcel and dashed into the study in agitation. No one is to disturb me. The incident at Sira's house earlier was the enemy's plot? Supreme Cloud's parcel explained the matter and pointed out, the most suspicious people now are the Crown Prince's residents of Shui Yuehan and Fu Yuanshan of Plethora Gem Tower. These 2 people have just been involved in a murder case at Sira's house. The old marshal's eyes shone as he read up to this point. It's not appropriate for the Board of War to act. The Board of Justice can act, detain them in the Board of Justice's cell and cooperate with the questioning. It's still necessary to go through the procedures. This was the end of the letter. However, the old marshal understood tacitly. I was wondering how such a thing could happen to our family. We were indeed framed, it was a conspiracy. The 9th heavens dictum was right when it came to these suspicious people. If the Board of War were to act, it would be easily seen through, but if the Board of Justice were to act, it would be an open and proper investigation into the deaths of the 3 people at Sira's house. However, the old marshal was looking forward to what would happen after they were arrested. The next morning, the officials of the Empire of Yutong's Board of Justice were dispatched. They first went to Sira's house to find Yun Zuyu to understand the situation, then ordered her to not go out, not to go missing, and to wait for the Board of Justice's summons. The wording was extremely strict. These people then went to the inn and politely invited Dong Tianling, Chen Wanfeng, and Xia Bingchuan to the Board of Justice to cooperate with the investigation. They then sent someone to summon Fu Guanshan of Plethora Gem Tower to the Board of Justice for a confrontation. Finally, they sent someone with a letter to the Crown Prince's residence to look for His Highness, saying that the Board of Justice was handling a case and the residence's guest, Shui Yuehan, was required to make a trip to the Board of Justice. All of these were very normal procedures. There was indeed a murder case in Sira's house. Although both parties had reconciled and the officials would not pursue the matter if the people did not report it, it was still a major case involving 3 lives at the feet of the emperor. It was necessary for the Board of Justice to prepare the case and put on a show. Therefore Shui Yuan went without any pressure. Upon arriving at the Board of Justice, he asked a few questions as per usual. Shui Yuan then said, "Those people drank too much and accidentally fell to their deaths." Such a reason that even a ghost would not believe was the unified explanation of the 3 noble families' young masters, the shopkeeper of Plethora Gem Tower, and the guest of the Crown Prince's residence. After all, they had already discussed the countermeasures. Then the 3 parties gathered together to sort out the case. Dong Qinling, Chun Wanfeng, Shui Yuan, and Fu Guanshan sat in the hall and recounted the case. This made everyone feel more at ease. What else could have happened if all of us were gathered together? It was just a formality. Therefore, everyone was very cooperative. After everything was done, the official from the Board of Justice said with some embarrassment, "I'm very sorry, I can't let you all go yet. After all, there's still a verification procedure to go through. I'll have to trouble you all to stay in the Board of Justice for a night." The few of them were already mentally prepared for such an outcome. They obeyed the order gladly. "All of you can go back tomorrow morning." The official from the Board of Justice spoke humbly, obviously knowing that these people were not to be trifled with. "I'll have to trouble you all tonight. There's no spare room in the Board of Justice. You can only stay in the cells for the night." Humph! The few of them were relieved, but on the surface they looked very unhappy. Without saying a word, they entered their respective cells. Chapter 99. That night, the Board of Justice sent food and wine to Shui Yuan and Fu Guanshan, as if to express their apologies. "The development of the situation is as expected. We shall go back tomorrow. This unexpected incident can finally come to an end." Shui Yuan and Fu Guanshan heaved a sigh of relief, but they were also deeply displeased. It did not seem like it was going to be easy to rectify the Sira's house. They had not even exerted much effort and they were already in trouble, putting themselves in the spotlight. They might have to change their strategy in the future. In old Marshal Qiu's residence. Only a day's imprisonment? Qiu Jinhan felt that things would not be so simple. Supreme Cloud's token. Supreme Cloud's men had always observed every 10 steps before taking a step. How could there be something as easy as this? They had expended so much effort to suppress the Board of Justice through the Board of Military. Suppress the residence of Crown Prince through the Board of Justice using the nation's law. Suppress the martial world. Suppress the noble families. He used the power of the state to suppress all the forces and then put these people in prison, but he only made these people stay in prison for one night? It was so easy and inconsequential. "If nothing happens by tomorrow morning," old Marshal Qiu Jianhan mumbled with a frown, "I think I'll go crazy, but if something does happen, there shouldn't be any deaths. Supreme Cloud's plan won't be so shallow." Old Marshal Qiu thought hard. "Perhaps we should act rashly and alert the enemy? Lure the snake out of its hole? Lure out those who plead for mercy and catch the big fish? But it shouldn't be. The big fish in the dark won't even make a move on such a small matter. Especially when there's such a strong aura of danger, who would dare make a move? How strange. What do they want to do?" The old marshal sat in his study, mumbling to himself like he was suffering from hysteria. This matter could not be discussed with anyone else. Although it was a huge ruckus now, he was the only one in the entire empire of Yutong who truly knew about it. If any news were to leak, the consequences would be unimaginable. Thinking about it, old Marshal Qiu felt depressed and was about to go crazy. Night had fallen in the blink of an eye. The boundless night shrouded the land. The entire Tiantang city was silent. The atmosphere in the cells of the Ministry of Justice became even more solemn. Although Shui Yuan was in the cell, he was very calm. He looked like he was sitting with his legs crossed, but he was actually cultivating, inhaling and exhaling deeply and rhythmically. In such a quiet moment, the best thing to do was to cultivate. In particular, the surroundings of this prison cell of the Ministry of Justice were much quieter. There wasn't even the chirping of insects or the singing of cicadas. The quietness even gave Shui Yuan a thought, "It's not bad to cultivate here. The efficiency is high. Let's see if I can use my connections to come here to cultivate." From this, Shui Yuan could not help but think of a legend in the martial world. It was about a martial world expert who had been arrested for committing a crime. His crime was not minor, but it was not a capital offense. He had spent 8 whole years in prison. In the end, when this fellow was released after serving his sentence, he had transformed into a formidable expert. The cause and effect of this matter seemed inconceivable, but it was actually within reason. This fellow's actual ability had never been restrained, so he had naturally become the boss of all the prisoners in prison. He lived his life with ease, his clothes and food provided to him without any worries. There was no such thing as eating, drinking, or socializing. Under such an atmosphere, cultivation had instead become the only way to kill boredom. Just like that, he had broken through a few levels within 8 years and his ability had skyrocketed. After he had been released, he had often exclaimed, "8 years in prison has made me famous." Prison was a good place. Thinking of this, Shui Yuan chuckled inexplicably and murmured, "This fellow? He might not be lying after all. This prison, if I were to use some tricks, it would be a good place to focus on cultivation." Seeing that it was already midnight, the surroundings became even quieter. Shui Yuan stopped his cultivation and began to think quietly, sorting out everything that he had done in his heart. Wait for me to get out, there must be something fishy about this Cirrus house. Perhaps it was related to the remnants of the 9 Supremes. Was it a coincidence or was it a trap for the young masters of the 3 noble families to gather here? I can make use of this prison today and the power of the residence of Crown Prince to uncover the truth of this matter. He closed his eyes and racked his brains. He didn't notice that there was an inexplicable, colorless, and odorless thing in the prison cell. Wisps of faint green smoke slowly rose from a corner under the bed in the prison cell. Just as it emerged, it blended into the air of the prison cell, becoming one with it. There was no odor. The green smoke continued to rise. After a long time, Shui Yuan felt a little sleepy, his eyelids fighting to stay open. "Why am I so sleepy?" Just as the instinctive words left his mouth, Shui Yuan was shocked. An unprecedented look of shock appeared on his lean face. With his cultivation base, he would not feel so tired even if he did not sleep for a month. What was going on today? Something was not right. He took in a deep breath and immediately mobilized the mystical qi in his dantian to be safe. However, his face immediately became extremely miserable. The surging energy that was stored in his body could not be mobilized at all. All the mystical qi seemed to be trapped in his chakras, unable to be used no matter how hard he tried. Shui Yuan's eyes widened in fear. Then he saw that in front of him, a cloud of mist suddenly appeared out of thin air. The cloud of mist was dense and changing, constantly gathering in the air. Shui Yuan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets as he looked at the cloud of fog in extreme fear. He watched as the fog grew thicker and thicker, gradually forming into a solid mass in front of him. A person's silhouette slowly appeared in front of him in such an eerie manner. The newcomer's face was masked with a black cloth. His eyes were cold and gleaming with a calm light. He was tall and stood with his arms behind his back. Yun? Supreme Cloud. Witnessing such an eerie phenomenon, the name popped up in Shui Yuan's mind without a second thought. There was not a single sound in the cell that was completely sealed. There was no gap, no movement, no tunnel or anything of the sort. Instead, a cloud of fog appeared out of thin air and a person emerged from it. There was only one person in this world who could possess such a skill. No one else, not even Ling Xiaozui who had become a legend or Dugucho who was a living legend, could do it. It could only be Supreme Cloud of Yutong's 9 Supremes. There was only one such person in this world. Yun Yang's eyes behind the mask looked at Shui Yuan indifferently. He smiled softly and said, "Mr. Shui has a good eye indeed. You are indeed the backbone of the 4 Seasons Tower." Shui Yuan forced a chuckle. "Forgive this old man's ignorance, I don't understand what Supreme Cloud is saying." He smiled and said, "Supreme Cloud's hero's return this time is even better than before. It is Yutong's fortune, a joyous occasion that concerns Yutong's well-being. This old man is overjoyed that the hero is safe and sound." Yun Yang said faintly, "I will make you even happier." He stretched his arm out to grab Shui Yuan's neck. Shui Yuan's eyes bulged as he raised his arms to block instinctively. However, he had lost his cultivation base and was like an ordinary person. Just as he came into contact with Yun Yang's hand, his arm broke with a crack. Yun Yang's hand was already gripping his neck. Looking at Yun Yang, Shui Yuan's gaze was suddenly filled with extreme hatred. "Immortal's odium?" Yun Yang smiled faintly. "Mr. Shui is indeed knowledgeable. You are indeed the backbone of the 4 Seasons Tower." Immortal's odium was a poison that cultivators hated and avoided the most. Once afflicted, one would become a cripple immediately. All of one's cultivation base would be destroyed, with no hope of recovery. Shui Yuan was utterly disheartened. He said softly, "Can Lord Supreme Cloud allow me to say a few words?" Yun Yang's gaze shifted. his hand still gripping his neck as he said, "Speak." Shui Yuan's gaze turned from fear to calmness. He sighed softly and said, "That day after Tianshan Cliff I've said something. If there were still people from the 9 Supremes who were still alive, the rest of us would definitely perish, let alone the others." Yin Yang asked, "Oh? Are you so sure?" Shui Yuan smiled faintly. "Honestly, if I knew that the one who was still alive among the 9 Supremes was actually the 9 Supreme Soul, Supreme Cloud, I would have changed my name and fled to the deserted island of the borderless ocean 170,000 miles away." Yun Yang said calmly, "You should have known that the 9 Supremes wouldn't really die. You should have escaped long ago, but the reality is that you didn't." Shui Yuan chuckled bitterly and said, "One can't rely on luck. If there's a next life, I'll remember these words and this lesson. Now I can only hope for my next life." Yun Yang stared at him, disappointment flashing in his eyes as he said softly, "Shui Yuan, Sir Shui, you're the first decisive person I've met in the Four Seasons Tower." Shui Yuan chuckled humorlessly. "Thank you for the compliment. May I ask how Supreme Cloud was so sure of me?" "Should I not be sure of you?" Yun Yang said faintly, "If you don't move, I won't be able to catch you. Once you move, you won't be able to escape. You understand what I'm saying?" Shui Yuan sighed softly. Sira's house is indeed related to the 9 Supremes, and the connection runs deep. I didn't make the wrong move back then. It's a pity that I would have exposed myself when I attacked. He smiled faintly. "Supreme Cloud, I hope you can be 1,000 times stronger, 10,000 times stronger, and truly annihilate the Four Seasons Tower. If there's such a time, don't forget to tell me." Yin Yang said, "I will. Go in peace." Chapter 100. A puff of green smoke rose abruptly. Shui Yuan's gaze was trained on Yin Yang. Silently, his entire body trembled as his flesh and blood turned into nothingness. There was only a shriveled mummy left on the ground. His life, soul, flesh and bones had condensed into a pile of decaying bones. Yin Yang sighed softly. With a wave of his hand, a gust of wind blew past and the mummified remains of Shui Yuan turned into dust on the ground. The moment he saw Shui Yuan, Yin Yang knew that he was destined to gain nothing this time. Because this person was simply too calm. Too calm. This was a person who did not care about life and death. When he had called out the name Supreme Cloud in shock, he had already known that he was doomed. From then on, his eyes had begun to glow with the intent to die. When Yun Yang had mentioned the Four Seasons Tower and ignored his excuses, Shui Yuan had already made up his mind to say these 4 words and die with his soul dispersed. He had ended his own life so calmly without Yun Yang having to torture him. Yun Yang had a feeling that perhaps this Shui Yuan he had met was one of the pillars of the Four Seasons Tower in the truest sense. Before this, Zhao Binglong could not even be considered a character. Chu Tianlang was at most a peripheral character. These two could be swapped out at any time. Li Chanchio's disguise was more brilliant, but he was only a spy. He was from the Four Seasons Tower, but he was definitely not as important as Shui Yuan. Yin Yang sighed. With a grasp of his hand, the traceless smoke in the air slowly condensed into his palm. With a wave of his sleeves, the ground was cleaned up in an instant. Then he turned into a cloud and drifted away. He could only hope that Fu Guansan would not die so easily. Otherwise, other than killing 2 people who could be confirmed to be from the Four Seasons Tower, he would gain nothing else. On the other side, Fu Guansan did not notice anything out of the ordinary. He was already lying on the bed, snoring loudly. For someone as burly as him, the small bed he was on was obviously too small. Even though the bed was small and his legs were dangling beneath the bed, Fu Guansan was still snoring loudly in his sleep. The application of the Immortal's enmity was very convenient. One just had to scatter it on the target, and as long as the target was still breathing, it was basically impossible for the target to escape. At this moment, Fu Guansan's cultivation was reduced to smoke without any difficulty. This time Yun Yang did not even turn into smoke. Instead, he revealed himself and sat by the bed. Yun Yang had been there for a long time, but the man was still snoring, completely oblivious to his presence. As a martial artist, he doesn't have the slightest bit of vigilance. What an oddity. Yun Yang stroked his chin, looking at Keeper Fu as if he was a curious specimen. What I like the most are these people whose willpower has been eroded by a comfortable life. Yun Yang exclaimed. It was the middle of the night. To be more precise, it was the middle of the night. The originally silent prison cell of the Ministry of Justice suddenly exploded with a loud bang. Amidst the stillness, the impact of such a loud bang was deafening. All the guards were startled awake by the noise. Those who were sleeping soundly were startled by the sudden loud noise and fell off the bed. They stood up in a daze like headless flies, not knowing what had happened. The prison cell. Someone roared. Someone has broken into the prison. With a loud bang, everyone sprinted in that direction. In the blink of an eye, a loud explosion came from the cell that held Shui Yuan. The cell door was smashed to pieces as a tall silhouette dashed out like lightning and smashed the cell door that held Fu Guansan. Follow me quickly. The voice was low and urgent, obviously Shui Yuan's. The three young masters who were in the three cells next to the cell were startled and sprung up from their beds. In spite of this, the doors of the three young masters were smashed as well. Hidden weapons that were as thick as cow's hair filled the entire narrow cell. An eerie chuckle could be heard. Little bastards, even if I don't want your lives, I'll make you suffer a little. A cloud of smoke billowed into the air. With a swoosh, the two silhouettes merged into a long dragon and flew out. With a single leap, they flew up to the 50-feet-high wall of the Board of Justice. With a stomp of their feet, they soared up like a giant bird. In the next moment, the two silhouettes disappeared into the night at the same time. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The soldiers who were just in time to intercept them were shot down from the wall like dumplings being thrown into a pot. Shui Yuan has escaped. Shui Yuan has broken out of the prison. He's taken Fu Guansan with him. He's injured the guards. He's even injured the three young masters of the Chun, Xia and Dong family. Someone come quickly, the three young masters are covered in fine needles now, they've turned into three porcupines. Almost instantly the entire Board of Justice was shaken. A quarter of an hour later the entire Tiantang city was shaken. How many years had it been since something like this happened? The criminal had actually put on a show of force and escaped from the Board of Justice's cell. The Board of Justice was in a state of chaos. Because those three young masters had now truly become porcupines. Starting from their faces to their necks, chests, abdomens, thighs, all the way to their feet, they were covered in needles that were as thin as a cow's hair. Fortunately, the needles were not poisoned, nor were they deliberately aimed at their vitals. Even the force of the needles was not strong, so these three fellows were still alive and very conscious. Obviously, Shui Yuan's goal was to make them suffer a little and not to kill them. After all, once he had done so, he would be making an enemy out of the three noble families. In spite of this, the three noble young masters were still squealing like pigs being slaughtered, especially young master Xia Bingchuan, who was especially wretched. Pluck the needles off my face first. Pity my handsome face. Young master Dong Qianling was even more enraged. King Shui Yuan, wait for me to get out. Just you wait. Bastard. Bastard. Your father will drag you out even if I have to flatten the residence of Crown Prince. What if King bastard? I will not live under the same sky with this person. Young Master Chun Wanfeng was the calmest among the three. He allowed the Board of Justice's personnel to pluck the needles out of his face, gritting his teeth. Suddenly he shuddered. Oh my God, be gentler. It hurts. Oh my God. You bastard, are you doing this on purpose? Can you wait until I'm done with my act before you do it? Oh my God, it hurts so much. It hurts so much. Ouch. Of course, the three young masters could not stay in their cells after such a serious incident had happened. The guards of the three noble families came upon hearing the news, all of them scowling in anger. Our young masters have encountered such a serious incident in Tiantang City, there must be an explanation. Where is Shui Yuan? Hurry up and hand it over to us. As for the Board of Justice, our young masters are giving you face this time, he's only cooperating so that you won't be able to answer for your mission. You've made it clear then, but now that such a serious incident has happened, what can you say? The three young masters were taken away by their own families. The Board of Justice's personnel could do nothing about it. They were in a terrible predicament. I'm not going back. Dong Qianling was infuriated when he heard the guards advising him to go back. He pointed at his face and said, I've been King pockmarked, do you see that? You want me to go back if I don't avenge myself? I won't go back even if you beat me to death. How can this elder brother be so humiliated? Exactly, go back? Xia Bingchuan snorted, if I don't find these two bastards and tear them into pieces, Xia Bingchuan, won't go back even if I have to die here. Of course I won't go back either. Chun Wanfeng's face was bitter. I've been stabbed with more than 700 needles. More than 700 needles. You want me to go back with my tail between my legs? What are you all thinking? This is not over yet. Tell my family, tell my grandfather, my grandmother, my eldest grandfather, my third grandfather, my fifth grandfather, my sixth grandfather, my eldest uncle, second uncle, third uncle, fourth uncle, sixth uncle, seventh uncle, eighth uncle, ninth uncle, 15th uncle. Ask them to avenge me. Otherwise, I won't go back no matter what. I've suffered such a great loss, I can't do without an explanation. That's right, tell my father, my mother, my grandfather, my ancestors. I'm not going back, I've suffered a great loss. Me too, tell them. The 6 guards of the 3 noble families felt a headache coming on. They were truly 3 young masters. They dared to break out of the prison in the Board of Justice. The situation now was unprecedentedly perilous. If you're not careful and lose your life here, that means our lives will be lost here with you. However, the 3 young masters had made up their minds not to go back. Everyone was enraged and the guards could only send a message to their families, asking them to send experts to support us. We can't seem to hold on any longer, we're really not confident. Come to think of it, Dong Qianling suddenly had a strange thought, we brothers are really in the same boat. A few days ago that bastard Qiu Yunsan was almost paralyzed from the beating and is still bedridden. Now we're all bedridden as well, our conditions are even worse than his. Come to think of it, isn't it true that we're all in the same boat? You're right. Xia Bingchuan was sympathetic as he said, I even laughed at him back then, King Hell, your father is even worse than him now, I've become pockmarked. It might not be pockmarked, they're all needles this thin. Dong Qianling said, when we get out, let's make another bet. Whoever loses will be pockmarked forever, the needles on his face won't be allowed to be treated. Scram. The Board of Justice was in deep trouble this time. Everywhere was in chaos. The people from the Board of Justice went to the Crown Prince's residence anxiously. The people there were dumbfounded. Escape? Escape? And injured someone? Severely injured the 3 great young masters? And the Crown Prince was dumbfounded as well. Didn't you say that you're only going in to cooperate with the investigation for a day? You'll be released tomorrow, but you're acting crazy in the middle of the night? You can come out when the sun rises, but you're causing such a huge mess in the middle of the night? What the hell are you doing? The Crown Prince felt like he was going crazy. Why can't I understand the brains of these martial artists? There are a few sentences to be said at the end of the chapter. The book so far seems to be all right, but I have discovered one problem of my own. It's still not built properly. To put it simply, there's still some flesh but no bones. The spirit is there, the flesh is there, but the bones are not strong enough. I'm trying to solve this problem. This is a very obvious flaw. Don't be impatient everyone, I'll solve it. It's fortunate that I've discovered it earlier. If it were a few 100,000 words, it would be difficult to fix. Chapter 101. Check Shui Yuehan's residence. The Crown Prince was fuming. Crown Prince, there's no one in Shui Yuehan's residence. Everything inside has not been touched. He probably hasn't returned. Search everywhere. You must find him. Yes? Go to Plethora Gem Tower and see if Fu Guansan has returned. Yes? At the same time, Plethora Gem Tower was also in a state of chaos. A prison break was no small matter. The Board of Justice had taken control of Plethora Gem Tower at once and everyone was being interrogated. It was one thing for the Board of Justice and the residents of Crown Prince not to provoke the 3 noble families, but a mere Plethora Gem Tower, a martial world gang, dared to break out of prison? Under the circumstances where no one else could be provoked, who else could they target but you? If they really did nothing, where would the authority of the Board of Justice be? With a single order, Plethora Gem Tower was sealed and all personnel were arrested and locked up in the Board of Justice's prison. Everything had happened in a single morning. Cough cough cough. When old Marshal Qiu Jianhan found out about these things, it was dawn. He had been drinking a bowl of plain water, but he spat it out upon hearing the news. Not only that, he choked on the water, coughing so hard that the sun and moon seemed to dim. Cough cough cough, cough cough cough, cough cough, cough cough. Everyone in the residence of Marshal stared at the old Marshal with their mouths agape. What was going on? They had never seen him coughing so badly in the morning. Sir Wang, who had come to report the matter, was even more bewildered. The Board of Justice's matter was not trivial, but it was not to the extent of making you lose your composure all the time. Cough cough. The old Marshal finally stopped coughing, his face flushed red from holding it in. I knew it. Those fellows were up to no good. Shui Yuehan broke out of prison himself? Your father wouldn't believe it even if you beat him to death. He must have been taken away secretly. I knew that those fellows had a plan, but this is too much. Using the country's machinery to be your hired thugs? Understood. The old marshal said sanctimoniously, it's just a few martial world people breaking out of prison. At most, someone from the residence of Crown Prince is involved. What's there to be concerned about? You actually came to tell me about such a trivial matter. Is there a need to? The corner of Mr. Wang's mouth twitched. Such a small matter? Wasn't it that bad? You coughed so hard just now and you think I can't tell? His mouth, however, said, yes, this matter really can't be put on the table. However, this matter involves the Crown Prince's manor and the Myriad Treasure Tower in the end. Some turbulence is unavoidable. We should still be more cautious. Yes, this is a problem. Old Marshal Chiu stroked his beard and said, tell the Board of Punishments to let them go when it's about time. It's not a good thing to implicate them unnecessarily. The Myriad Treasure Tower was ultimately one of the top 10 organizations of the Profound Sky Continent's pugilistic world. The face that should be given still had to be preserved. What Fu Guanshan did alone, other people might not know about it, right? Mr. Wang repeatedly agreed and retreated. However, he thought to himself, old Chiu is weird. Since when did he care about the reputation of the people in the martial world? The Ministry of Justice was in chaos. The Crown Prince's residence was in chaos. The entire Tiantang city was in chaos. The three young masters were also in a state of chaos. Even Yun Yang's side was a mess. Fu Guanshan had been captured, but after he was captured, Yun Yang realized that something was amiss. Yun Yang had only used a few tricks and this keeper Fu was already hovering between life and death, almost spilling the beans of his ancestors. What happened to your cultivation base? Yun Yang was dumbfounded, not daring to believe his own judgment. Cultivated to the 5th peak? Fu Guanshan wanted to cry but had no tears. Crippled, Yun Yang twitched. But I clearly saw you fight in Sira's house. That's the power of the dream retrieval pill? Fu Guanshan was trembling from the pain. When I need to fight someone, I can consume a dream retrieval pill and my previous cultivation base will return temporarily. However, it can only last for an hour. After the time limit, my body will be slightly weaker, but it's fine. Dream retrieval pill? Yun Yang had heard of this pill before. It was said that a master of alchemy had misunderstood a person and chased him for thousands of miles to cripple the person's cultivation base. However, he later realized that he had wronged a good person. Filled with remorse, he searched for spiritual medicine to the ends of the earth and finally refined the dream retrieval pill. However, this pill was only suitable for people whose cultivation base was below the 7th peak of mystical chi. Experts who had surpassed the 7th peak could only unleash the power of the 7th peak even if they consumed the dream retrieval pill when their cultivation base was crippled. This was the limit. In Tianshan continent, the dream retrieval pill had another resounding name: regret medicine. Yun Yang looked up at the sky, speechless. If I had known that you were constantly consuming regret medicine, why would I have used the Immortal's Odium? What a waste of my Immortal's Odium. Using the precious Immortal's Odium to deal with a piece of trash. I've really set a precedent for this item to be used against the opposite party. Why did you go to Sira's house? I like Lady Zuyu. I want to hear the truth. This is the truth. I really like Lady Zuyu. Yun Yang was speechless. You're still matchmaking for someone if you like her? I'm not being asked to do so. Amicable business brings wealth. Young Master Chiu returned empty-handed. Of course, I have to seize the opportunity. Yun Yang really wanted to slap the fellow in front of him to death when he asked this. Fortunately, he asked another question. Someone asked you to do this? Chiu Yin-san asked you? Are you qualified to be asked to do so by young Master Chiu? It's not Chiu Yin-san. Fu Guanshan's face was twitching from the pain. It's Keeper Me who asked me to help young Master Chiu. How can I afford to offend Keeper Me? Although I'm not willing to be a matchmaker, Keeper Me promised me that when young Master Chiu succeeds, he'll think of a way for me to. A murderous aura rose on Yun Yang's face. He forcefully restrained himself and asked, who is this shopkeeper Me? Fu Guanshan watched Yun Yang's expression carefully and said, Keeper Me, is Mi Kongchuan. Mi Kongchuan. Yun Yang's expression changed. He had thought of all the keepers with the surname Mi in Tiantang City, but he had missed this person. The palace's inner keeper. He was in charge of the entire palace's purchasing. From a certain perspective, he was the minister of imperial household. Someone close to His Majesty the Emperor. No wonder everyone was so respectful. It was him. What a high position. While Yun Yang was enlightened, there was also a deep sense of worry. Keeper Me. No wonder he's called Keeper Me. So he's in charge of the inner keeper. From eunuch Wu who tried to assassinate me 2 nights ago to this keeper me? How much has the palace been infiltrated? Yin Yang frowned. The 9th and 11th day of the first lunar month that Wu Wenyuan had told him about had not been found out. The advisor to the crown prince that Chu Tianlang had told him about, was the advisor to the crown prince referring to Shui Yuehan or someone else? As for the general, he could only confirm that Tai Zheng, one of the Empire of Yutong's 5 generals, was he referring to Shui Yuehan or someone else? Or perhaps someone with a lower status? It could not be any higher because there were only 2 more people above the military. Qiu Jianhan and Leng Daoyin. Saber and sword duo Yutong's national marshals. These 2 people could not possibly be from the Four Seasons Tower. There were at least 2 suspicious people in the palace. Eunuch Wu and Keeper Mi. Was there anyone else? Yun Yang's action this time was to get rid of Fu Guansan and Shui Yuehan directly with the help of the authorities. What would they do next? Who was the mysterious Supreme Lord Springfrost who had mastered such a sinister blood curse of verbal spirit? It looked like he had broken through the other party's setup in this round. But had he really done so? Would they still go after Cirrus House? Yun Yang was deep in thought, his face reflecting an elegant yet mysterious color under the dim light. Looking at this face, Fu Guansan suddenly had a strange feeling that this face didn't seem to belong to the human world, but rather, the netherworld. As he stared at it, he actually shuddered. Young master, eunuch, son? Fu Guansan was trembling. I've told you everything I know. Can you let me go? I won't dare to do it again. Yun Yang lifted his head slowly, his cold gaze staring at Fu Guansan's face without emotion. Fu Guansan grew increasingly afraid as he said, This lowly one is only the keeper of Plethora Gem Tower, my authority is very limited. Young master, my brother-in-law is the manager of Plethora Gem Tower here. Please have mercy. There will be repayment in the future. Yun Yang looked at him quietly with his head tilted. A few strands of hair hung down, floating on the side of his face. In the darkness, there was a sense of desolation and melancholy. Swoosh! A flash of saber light appeared abruptly. Fu Guansan did not have the time to beg for mercy as his head fell to the ground. It was a clean cut. Yun Yang got up slowly and walked out of the door. Long after he had left the secret chamber, Fu Guansan's headless body fell slowly to the ground behind him. His head rolled on the ground and was now facing upwards. There was no fear left on his face, only endless, indescribable doubt. Even at the moment of his death, he couldn't understand why the other party didn't kill him. He had revealed his background, revealed his brother-in-law's extraordinary identity, revealed his group, and said that he would definitely be repaid. But suddenly he had been stabbed. A single slash. Why was this so? Yun Yang went back to his bedroom. It had now become a place that Yun Yang enjoyed so much that he forgot to return. His own bedroom. However, there were too many of them here now. Wind, flame, blood, and thunder. Other than Supreme Wind's will which had been destroyed by him, the rest, including his own, were all here. There were also his brother's cultivation methods. Mystical Wind Pearl, Spark Pearl, Fog Pearl, Blood Pearl, Divine Thunder Pearl. Looking at the 5 pearls that were filled with mysterious powers, Yun Yang sat down quietly and filled a goblet with wine. He smiled and said, "Brothers, do you know that our enemy is unimaginably powerful? As I investigate further, I realize that the Four Seasons Tower's immensity is actually immeasurable. I wonder if any of you have thought of this?" Chapter 102. Yun Yang's serene smile was like an active volcano that was about to erupt, completing its final preparations. It was the last moment of silence before the eruption. Actually, I really missed those simple-minded days. We only thought about winning and killing our enemies. We would never consider the turbulent undercurrents beneath the peaceful world. Perhaps only eldest brother would think about it. Back then, eldest brother held my hand when he was on the verge of death and said, "Oh ninth, if you can go back alive, be an executioner outside the law." Perhaps at that time, boss had already seen the devastation of this country, the hidden tumors and acne on its body, or perhaps eldest brother had seen the turbulence in the dark and wanted to save my life. Once Supreme Cloud's identity is exposed, he would die without a doubt. Yun Yang sighed and took out his will. It was a strange feeling for a living person to read his own will. There was only one sentence in Yun Yang's will: "I don't know who I am and I have nothing to worry about, so there's nothing else." Yun Yang smiled, thinking that if his brothers read his will, would they laugh or cry? "I really don't know who I am, The will that belonged to Yun Yang slowly turned into ashes in his hands, turning into a puff of green smoke and disappearing from this world. Old Dugu, this is my father, help me take care of him. Let him enjoy the rest of his life and take care of him in my place. This was seventh brother Supreme Blood's will. Other than the instructions that his brothers had, there was also this sentence about himself. Yun Yang felt a throbbing pain in his heart. The token of gratitude in front of his chest was like a piece of charcoal, burning his heart painfully. Sixth brother Supreme Lightning's will, I was chased out by my family. 8 innately awakened chakras saying that I'm useless. I can't cultivate my family's cultivation method, my biological parents are dead, so I was chased out by eldest uncle. If I die, if any of my brothers are still alive, if there's a chance, go and burn incense for my parents. Tell them that their son went to look for them and that they died too early, causing their son to be bullied. I forgot to mention my family is in the bound of universe, the Lei family. As for helping me vent my anger, forget about it. The Lei clan is too powerful. Anyway, I've been living my life happily. If I hadn't been chased out, I wouldn't have met you guys. If you guys really help me vent my anger and end up dying in battle, I won't recognize you guys in my next life. Live well. I, Lei Mu Feng, haven't lived a wonderful life yet. Live it for me. Yun Yang's gaze was fixed on the will. Supreme Wind's words seemed to play out in front of him. All 6 seems to be a descendant of a noble family. But what kind of family was this Lei family? How could someone with 8 innately awakened acupores be called trash? Would he even be chased out? In the entire empire of Yutong, people with 8 innately awakened chakras were rare, even if they were not the only ones. That was the gift of an unparalleled prodigy. How did he become trash in the Lei family? I only had 7 innately awakened chakras when I obtained the golden lotus of fate. If sixth brother was a good-for-nothing, wouldn't I be worse than a good-for-nothing? Also, where was the bound of universe? He had never heard of such a place in the Tianshan continent. With the 9 Supremes intelligence network, it was truly inconceivable that he had never heard of such a place. The bound of universe, Yun Yang murmured, sixth brother, don't worry. If I'm not capable enough, I won't provoke the strong. However, if this young brother's capability reaches that level, I'll still wipe out the Lei family and help you vent your anger. As long as I'm not injured or dead, you have no reason to say that you don't know this young brother, right? Also, leave the matter of burning incense for our parents to me. Once I find out, I'll send you to reunite with your parents. Yun Yang looked at Supreme Flame's will that he had yet to open. What would fifth brother say? Thinking of Supreme Flame, of Yun Zuyu, of Yun Yang's heart ached like it was being cut by a knife. If I die, help me take care of Zuyu. Supreme Flame's will contained a tinge of passion amidst the calmness. Zuyu is a stubborn lady. All of you know her. Whether I live or die, she'll always be my wife. Call her sister-in-law when you see the elder, sister-in-law when you see the younger. If you don't acknowledge her identity, she'll follow me. After 8 to 10 years, when her heart has calmed down, think of a way to give her a share of family happiness. If she finds a good home, none of you are allowed to disturb her. All of the 9 Supremes vanish from her sight. Lest she recalls the past and hesitates when she sees all of you. Sigh, Yun Yang sighed. I'm an orphan, so is Zuyu. Yun Zuyu, this name was given by her later on. My name was also randomly given by myself. It doesn't matter if I say it or not. Actually, I like the name Supreme Flame the most. If I die, I only hope that my brothers who are alive can live on. Actually, I really don't want to die. I'm still thinking if I can find my parents and ask them if they abandoned me. Or if they sold me. Or if my parents are already long dead. Can I light incense for them? What I want the most is to hold Zuyu's hand and light incense in front of my parents' graves, or to find them and call them father and mother. Whether I'm abandoned or sold, I don't hate them. I'll acknowledge them and be filial to them. I don't want to die. I have a lot of things to do. None of you can do them for me. On my chest, there are 3 traces of being burned by fire, forming the shape of a mountain. If I really die, help me find my parents. Call them father and mother for me. I've never called them since I was young. I don't know if I'll cry when I do. Also, don't blame them. In such a chaotic world, Supreme Flame's will ended with a sigh. Looking at Supreme Flame's will, Yun Yang thought of himself. Suddenly, there was a sense of desolation and loneliness, as if he was the only one in this vast world. The melancholy in his heart could not be shaken away. It was oppressive, almost suffocating. I have a new decision now. Yun Yang said quietly, I've taken out everything from the residents of 9 Supremes. I'm selfish. Other than us, I don't want anyone else to be called the 9 Supremes. I can't accept that. It's fine if the residence of 9 Supremes is never opened. But what if it's open one day? Yunyang murmured, so I've made this selfish decision. I hope you won't blame me. I'm only 7 innately awakened chakras now. What I can cultivate now is only everyone's first stage as well as cloud, wind, and fire. It's already difficult to progress with these 3 cultivation methods. I might even be worse than a piece of trash. Yunyang said quietly, so I need to improve my ability, so that I can unleash more power. These 2 people from the palace are too powerful. They won't be easily shaken. Yunyang's eyes glinted coldly. But, no matter how powerful they are, I'll make them and the 4 Seasons Tower behind them pay the heaviest price. The first stage of the endless divine art had been perfected while Yunyang's mystical chi level had reached the pinnacle of the 3rd peak. The fog of cloud conjuration that Yunyang was famous for had also been cultivated to the 3rd stage. Mystique wind conjuration and fiery charm had also been forcefully cultivated to the 3rd stage due to the previous battle. As for thunder crash conjuration and crimson devil conjuration, they were only cultivated to the 1st stage. However, Yunyang had encountered a bottleneck now. It was extremely difficult to break through to the 4th stage of the cultivation method. Yunyang, whose cultivation base had not been damaged, had cultivated fog of cloud conjuration to the pinnacle of the 3rd stage before he was stuck there. Now that he had cultivated it again, it was still a bottleneck. Yunyang knew that this was the limitation of his talent. Actually, it was not only the fog of cloud conjuration, but also mystique wind conjuration and fiery charm. After reaching the pinnacle of the 3rd stage, there was no further progress. He believed that thunder crash conjuration and crimson devil conjuration would be the same. That was why Yunyang could not wait to break through to the 2nd stage of the endless divine art. Since he could awaken new chakras when he cultivated the 1st stage, there should be some benefits when he broke through to the 2nd stage. On the same night, when Yunyang walked out, he left in the form of a cloud. Feng Mafei and Lao Mei did not know about it. Towering Wind Pavilion. This was a very strange place. Underneath the Towering Wind Pavilion was a medium-sized casino. Although it was said to be medium-sized, it could still accommodate 400 to 500 people to play together. However, this was the most famous gambling place in Tiantang City. The Towering Wind Pavilion only had a pavilion master, a major domo, and the rest were all stewards. In terms of manpower, it could be said to be weak. However, during the 4 years that the Towering Wind Pavilion had been established in Tiantang City, no one had dared to cause trouble for the Towering Wind Pavilion. The only exception had been the year before. Yunyang had felt that he was short on money, the lack of silver taels needed to take care of the injured soldiers and the families of the martyrs. After weighing the pros and cons, he had finally decided to target the Towering Wind Pavilion. Actually, strictly speaking, Yunyang had not gained the upper hand that time. Ling Yun and the pavilion master of the Towering Wind Pavilion had almost exchanged blows, but he had not gained any advantage. In the end, it was 8th Brother Supreme Wind who had come forward to suppress the matter and had even taken out 10 million silver taels from the Towering Wind Pavilion to solve the monetary crisis. After that, he had specially invited Supreme Wind for a drink to ask about the mysteries of the matter. After all, he had not handled the matter well and there were many loose ends. Even now, Yunyang still did not know whether to laugh or cry when he recalled the incident. There was no other reason. The pavilion master of the Towering Wind Pavilion was Supreme Wind's incarnation. It was all thanks to this fellow. First, he had fought with Yunyang with a red face and then, after solving the problem on his own, he had shamelessly asked Yunyang to treat him to a drink. He had done the bad guy, but he had also done the good guy. He had even lectured Yunyang. The pavilion master of the Towering Wind Pavilion can give some compensation during the mediation after the incident, but you can never admit defeat after the incident. Otherwise, how can the Towering Wind Pavilion's unshakable reputation be maintained? Do you understand? Do you admit defeat? What could he say? What did he dare to say? Supreme Wind was really good at putting on an act. Chapter 103. Really? The mask Yunyang was wearing now was the Towering Wind Pavilion Master's mask. After thinking for a long time, he smacked his lips. This Towering Wind Pavilion Master is really shameless. Dressed in green and wearing a unique mask, Yunyang entered the Towering Wind Pavilion. Pavilion Master. Pavilion Master is here. Along the way, stewards came up to greet him. Yunyang only snorted and continued walking. A figure flashed in front of him, and a young man in white clothes appeared. He was tall and handsome, and his face was gentle and refined. However, his voice was indescribably hoarse, as if his throat had been seriously injured and he couldn't speak. Pavilion Master, you've finally appeared. The young man in white said. This was Supreme Wind's Towering Wine Pavilion's top general. Young Master Wuyin Shui Wuyin. Yun Yang was very interested in this person and had even seen him as a thorn in his side. This was because this person was meticulous and meticulous. He could be considered a top-notch character. However, there was only one thought in his mind now. What should I do about this Shui Wuyin? Eighth brother is gone, should I tell him? This person is a talent, it would be a pity to let him go, but how can I let him stay? Do I have to continue deceiving him using eighth brother's identity? Wuyin, how's the profit during this period? Yun Yang sat down on the Pavilion Master's seat, his voice indifferent. It's all right. A graceful smile hung on Shui Wuyin's face. However, Pavilion Master hasn't shown up for such a long time. This subordinate was extremely worried. I almost ran away with the money. Yun Yang smiled. You don't care about this bit of money? Shui Wuyin chuckled hoarsely and said, Will Pavilion Master be staying for some time this time? Yun Yang frowned and asked, Is there anything? Nothing, but I might have to make a trip home during this period of time. Shui Wuyin said, Pavilion Master wasn't around previously, this young brother dared not leave rashly. Now that Pavilion Master is back, this young brother will have to go back to handle those matters. Towering Wind Pavilion can close down when you return. You can reopen when you come back. Yun Yang said indifferently, How much profit have we made during this period of time? How much trouble? Shui Wuyin said, A year and a half's profit is almost 200 million silver taels. This is the net profit. 200 million taels? Yun Yang said, Send it to the bank later and convert it into banknotes. 500 and 1,000 taels in total. All right. Shui Wuyin said, As for the trouble, that big sarcoma has been causing trouble for us almost every day at the Lu within Lu Casino opposite us. During this period of time, Pavilion Master hasn't been around, so he's been suppressing a lot of things. Yun Yang frowned, a sharp glint in his eyes. He still dares to come? He hasn't been here for some time. I heard that 40 to 50 of his men were killed. Shui Wuyin said with some schadenfreude. Now that Tiantang City is heavily guarded and the laws are even stricter, it's hard for this fellow to maintain his prostitution business. In addition to that, the last time you punished him to the point of almost hanging himself, he only has 10 to 20% of his original wealth left. His days are getting harder and harder, so he hasn't been here for the past 2 to 3 months. Yin Yang nodded faintly. Go get the banknotes first. I'll go to the tower within the tower later tonight. We can't just let him come to us and we don't go to him. Courtesy demands reciprocity. Shui Wuyin chuckled. I've been waiting for Pavilion Master to say this for a long time. Shall I accompany Pavilion Master tonight? What are you going to do? Go get the banknotes for me now. Yun Yang gave him a sideways glance. I can go alone. Wouldn't it be too much of a bully if both of us went? Shui Wuyin chuckled hoarsely, but deep down he had a strange feeling that something was amiss. The Pavilion Master before him was flawless, be it his physique, speech, tone, aura, gaze, movement, or habits. He was no different from how he had been in the past. However, Shui Wuyin still found it odd because the person before him did not give him the sense of intimacy that was imprinted in his bones. There was always a sense of alienation and estrangement. Boss, do you still remember my injury? Shui Wuyin asked abruptly. Your injury is not a problem. There will be a solution very soon. Yun Yang said, Don't worry. I'll be able to heal you within 3 months when you come back this time. Thank you for your concern, boss. The feeling in Shui Wuyin's heart could not be dispelled, but he did not speak anymore. On the same night, Yun Yang charged straight into the tower within the tower and swept the place up and down. He had long heard that this tower within the tower had set up gambling scams and enticed them to lend money. Once there was no money to be earned, they would force women into prostitution. In the past, he still needed this tower to fight against the Towering Wind Pavilion openly. Now that he had the excuse of absorbing the air of injustice and punishing evil, Yun Yang no longer planned to let this tower within the tower exist any longer. In just a few moves he had subdued the big boss of Lu Wailu Tower, Luda, who had a big tumor on his head. With a few tricks, he had forced this guy to hand over the remaining 10 to 20% of his wealth, which could still be considered a huge amount. Then he had this guy gather his core forces in the secret room. After making sure that there were no omissions, Yun Yang began his killing spree amidst the horrified gazes. The fresh blood of 30 to 40 people dyed the secret chamber crimson. Waves of air of injustice were kindly accepted by Emmy. When Yun Yang dusted his hands and walked out of the secret chamber, He watched as the underground chamber's door slowly closed. He channeled his cultivation to collapse the entrance above, burying the secret chamber underground. "I'll let all of you be buried underground then?" Yin Yang snorted. All sorts of treasures and wealth had been collected into 10 sacks. When Shui Wuyin came to help, his eyes were wide open. "Boss, did you rob the tower within the tower?" Shui Wuyin was stuttering. "No," replied Yin Yang. Shui Wuyin was bewildered. Yin Yang said faintly, "From now on, there will be no more tower within the tower in this world." Shui Wuyin was speechless. "Boss, I thought you were only looking for trouble. Who would have thought that you'd annihilate them directly? We won't have a fixed source of income in the future." Shui Wuyin still felt that it was a pity. "Initially, boss, whenever you feel that you're short of money, you'll go and extort them. But now," Yin Yang sighed, "the problem is that we're short of money now. We have to act according to the situation." "What a strong reason. I actually have nothing to say." Shui Wuyin was utterly speechless. At the end of the day, Yin Yang and Supreme Wind's personalities were quite different. Supreme Wind was cynical and could allow the existence of the dark side of the world, but these could become his tools. Yin Yang, on the other hand, abhorred evil and had always pursued the principle of eradicating evil. Once the evil deeds were discovered, they would be eliminated immediately. Moreover, his methods were extremely ruthless and clean. It was not entirely because the Lotus of Endless Fate required the air of injustice. Both of their personalities had their flaws. It was hard to say who was right and who was wrong. Getting himself a carriage, Yin Yang said, "I'll take the things away. Whenever you're going home, just close the door and leave. There's no need to inform me." Whatever he said now was unnecessary. He could only look for opportunities in the future. Looking at Yin Yang's departing silhouette, Shui Wuyin's gaze changed for a long time. He did not chase after him, only sitting down weakly. He did not speak for a long time. Ever since the arrival of the towering Wind Pavilion's master, every single detail slowly slid through his heart. Finally, a terrifying conclusion appeared in his mind. He felt that both his legs were numb and his head was buzzing. His head was dizzy. It was an indescribable fear. "You're a fake." He looked at the empty street, and these words finally came out from his throat. "I'm not leaving during this period of time." Shui Wuyin murmured, "I want to find out who you are. Why did you impersonate my boss? How did you know so much about us? How did you manage to impersonate boss so well? How did you manage to fool me? If you're sent by my boss, don't mention anything. However, if you've murdered my boss and attempted to take over his possessions, I Shui Wuyin will not rest until you're dead." Yin Yang had felt Shui Wuyin's abnormality and knew that the latter was suspicious of him. However, he had no choice but to leave now. He had no time to explain the whole story. Because, at this moment, the space of the divine sense had already started to turn upside down. The air of injustice from the 30 to 40 people he had just killed was beginning to take effect on Emmy. The effect was unprecedentedly huge. According to Yin Yang's estimation, at least, Emmy had enough energy to advance. The carriage arrived at a secluded corner in the dead of the night. Lao Mei and Fang Mafei appeared from the dark and began to deal with the matter. Yin Yang, on the other hand, had gone home in a flash. He did not even have the time to say anything before he went to bed. Meow. The 3 eclipse panthers that had been successfully modified by Yin Yang to meow, as well as the lightning cat, scurried over with a swoosh. Their 8 beady eyes were sparkling, obviously having caught a whiff of the restless vitality. Just as Yin Yang's deific consciousness entered his deific consciousness space, he was shocked. Although he had already expected that Emmy's extermination would greatly increase its reserves, he did not expect the entire space to be filled with a green gas that was almost completely solidified. Faced with such an abundance of life force, Yin Yang felt as if he was ascending to immortality. Seeing him enter, Emmy waved its tendrils excitedly, like a child showing off its new toy. Come and see, come and see." Yin Yang focused his gaze and saw that the second leaf on Emmy's body was slowly unfurling as well. Its emerald green color was almost transparent. Rays of rainbow radiance flowed slowly from the lotus leaf, constantly changing its position. Emmy's tendrils had increased to 4, waving about continuously. A mysterious and inexplicable will wormed its way into Yin Yang's mind. Watching the withering of 100 men, eradicating injustice in the secular world. Using evil to counter evil, heaven's will is complete. The double leaves of the golden lotus of creation are formed. Endless divine art, level 2 breakthrough. Chapter 104. At the same time, Yun-Yang felt a sharp pain in between his brows, followed by an intense itch. Then it was as if something had exploded between his brows. In that instant, it was as if countless streams of energy had dispersed from the spot, spreading to his limbs and bones. Instantly, his bones seemed to have lightened. Streams of black blood flowed out of the pores all over his body. Awakening the sense acupoint. The benefits of the endless divine arts breakthrough were within Yun-Yang's expectations, but when he truly felt the awakening of his sense acupoint, he still felt a tingling thrill as if he had been struck by lightning. Innately awakened 8 chakras. This was a rare talent in the entire Tianxian continent. However, thinking of how his 6th brother Supreme Thunder had been chased out because of his 8 chakras awakening, Yun-Yang spat. The bound of universe. Is it really that impressive? As the abundant life force rushed into his meridians, it rushed into his dantian. Then, after circling around for a while, it immediately surged out. Like a hot knife through butter, it broke through the barrier of the 3rd peak of Shenqi without any hindrance and rushed into the realm of the 4th peak. Within his meridians, it continued to surge violently, advancing triumphantly. Seeing this, Yun-Yang withdrew it with all his might. He would rather waste this energy in order to stop the advancement of his cultivation base. He could clearly feel that the mystical chi's flow on the path of the 4th heaven had not weakened at all. Instead, it was growing stronger. If he did not stop it, it would not be difficult for him to break through to the 5th peak with the help of this energy. It was even a matter of course. However, Yun-Yang did not want to break through to the 5th peak so soon. One mountain, one heaven. This was a description of how difficult it was to fully unleash one's cultivation base, but it was also a metaphor for the importance of one's cultivation base. He had just climbed to the 4th peak and stepped into this brand new territory. He had yet to experience the scenery beyond the mountain. If he were to break through to the 5th peak now, even if his ability would increase tenfold, it would forever leave a flaw in his martial cultivation that he had never experienced the 4th peak. Entering the realm of the 4th peak was only one aspect. Experiencing the scenery of the 4th heaven was the most important. If he did not experience it, it would only be detrimental to his future path of cultivation. Only the strong would take it. Although Yun-Yang urgently needed to improve his capability, he would not joke around with his future. Yun-Yang, who had forcefully suppressed his surging internal energy, shifted his focus to the 2nd lotus leaf. He stared at it with wide eyes, wondering if this leaf could fall as well and turn into a rare treasure like the divine edge. However, the lotus leaf did not fall even when his eyes were weary from staring at it. Emmy's vines danced and twined around Yun-Yang, acting coquettishly. It was obvious that Emmy was very happy. He seemed to be so happy that he couldn't even speak coherently. Yun-Yang's heart melted at the sight of her infatuation. In spite of this, Yun-Yang still had a terrible premonition in his heart. The endless divine art and the lotus of endless fate were not to be underestimated. The first advancement had killed 10 people, but the second advancement would probably require 100 deaths. During this period of time, he had killed more than 120 scum. Especially tonight, he had killed nearly 40 of them in one go. It was also after this that the lotus of endless fate showed signs of advancement. The endless divine art had also advanced to the 2nd beginner stage because of this. 10, 100, didn't that mean that the next time he leveled up, he would have to kill 1,000 people? Would the 4th stage not require 10,000? 100,000 for the 5th stage? The 6th stage, when the lotus of endless fate grew to its peak, would it not require the killing of billions of people? But how can there be so many wicked people in this world? Yun-Yang looked at Emmy, feeling rather helpless. Little fellow, do you really need so much air of injustice? I already feel hopeless now. Emmy only whimpered as it coiled around Yun-Yang. This is exactly why it's so difficult to complete the evolution. Hopeless is a nice way to put it. It should be hopeless. Yun-Yang heaved a long sigh. Feeling the overflowing mystical qi in his body that was on the verge of bursting, Yun-Yang could not help but feel that he was omnipotent and everything was within his grasp. The benefits of the advancement of the endless divine art did not stop at the growth of Yun-Yang's cultivation base. Following the advancement of the endless divine art, the fiery charm, mystique wind conjuration, and fog of cloud conjuration had also sped up. If Yun-Yang had not forcefully suppressed the advancement of his mystical qi, he would have long since broken through the 5th peak and reached the 6th peak. By then, the mystique wind conjuration and others would probably have soared to no lower than the 5th stage. Even when such a wonderful benefit was in sight, Yun-Yang gave it up decisively after some thought. Towering buildings are built from the ground, towering trees take root first. The foundation is the most important. Saber truth. Destiny Blade was restless once again following the breakthrough of the second stage of the endless divine art. To Yunyang, however, he could only look at the benefits. Up until now, he had yet to fully comprehend the first form of saber truth, Destiny Blade. The profoundness of this saber truth had surprised Yunyang, but the more he cultivated it, the more he felt that it was unfathomable, as if there was no end to it. At least, to the current Yunyang, he was far from being able to comprehend it completely. Therefore, even when the second form fell into his hands, he had to temporarily seal it away. The most important thing now is still the traitor. Yunyang snorted in his heart. Just as he was about to stand up, he was suddenly stunned. Countless white fur fluttered on his body. Looking around him, there seemed to be a few more piles of them. What's going on? Yunyang almost suspected that he had grown fur like this on his body. Turning around, he saw 4 naked and red little critters buried in the white fur, curled up into a ball and sleeping soundly. Yunyang could not help being stunned, but he quickly came to a realization. It seemed that Emi's advancement and the endless divine arts breakthrough had not only benefited him, but the little critters that were leaning on him had also benefited greatly. They had shed their fur en masse, and looking at the piles of them, it seemed that they had shed their fur more than once. Yunyang could not help but look forward to it. The first to leap up with a meow was the leader of the Eclipse Panthers, Big Whitey. Yunyang's naming of the 4 Eclipse Panthers and the Lightning Cat was very unique. Since the one he had sent out was called Big Whitey, the remaining ones were Whitey 2, Whitey 3, Whitey 4, and finally the Lightning Cat, which was naturally Whitey 5. Young Master Yun's naming sense was unique and out of everyone's expectations. Speaking of which, his standard was quite high. Big Whitey, who had been sleeping soundly, suddenly opened its misty eyes and looked at its own body. It stuck out its tongue and licked its body, tilting its head in confusion. Yunyang almost burst out laughing at its naive behavior. The little critter jumped out and shook its body, the white fur that had stuck to it falling off. Its red body looked like it had been boiled in a pot. There was not a single strand of fur on it, making it look hideous. Meow? Big Whitey looked at its naked body, feeling wronged. It lifted its head to look at Yunyang and meowed again, its eyes misty. What it meant was, meow, so ugly, are you stupid? This fur, won't it grow out in a few days? Yunyang was exasperated. What level are you now? Big Whitey kept licking its body with its tongue, busying itself with the task. There was a white mist rising from its body. After a while, the white mist dissipated. Yunyang was surprised to find that Big Whitey's fur had grown out again and was even smoother than before. Big White wagged its tail and stood up. It proudly shook its body and snorted twice. Then it walked out of the window with graceful cat-like steps. Before it left, it actually rolled its eyes at Yunyang in disdain. Yunyang scratched his head. This fellow can't be 6th level already, can it? Yunyang could not understand the little critter's shocking improvement. How much had he improved? Besides, why did its size not change at all after it had increased its level? It was still so small and dainty. This did not make sense. After a while, Whitey 2, Whitey 3, and Whitey 4 woke up as well. Each of them had experienced a similar process as Big Whitey, but after a while, the 3 little white fur balls were rolling around on the ground happily. Moreover, it was obvious that the mental state of these Eclipse Panthers, as well as the aura they occasionally exuded, were completely different from before. They were worlds apart. It was obvious that these little critters had benefited tremendously. However, Yunyang could not tell how great the benefits were with his own eyes. The only thing he could be sure of was that their bodies had not grown bigger. This was not bad. Only the Lightning Cat, Whitey 5, was still lying there motionlessly. Although Whitey 5 had been hanging out with Whitey 2, Whitey 3, and Whitey 4, it was still a Lightning Cat. Its origins had determined that its behavior was different from the other Whiteys. Yunyang could see with his naked eye that new fur was growing on the Lightning Cat's body continuously. It fell off quickly and then grew again. The 3 Eclipse Panthers watched the Lightning Cat happily but did not disturb it. Perhaps they knew better than Yunyang the Lightning Cat's current condition. Finally, after the 8th shedding, the Lightning Cat finally stood up. Its white fur was soft and silky, but its body was now 5 to 6 times bigger than before. From the looks of it, this white cat weighed at least 10 catties. Perhaps it should be called a big cat. However, it still looked cute and adorable. Meow, the Lightning Cat meowed lazily. Yunyang finally heard the difference. The Eclipse Panther meowed lazily. The Lightning Cat meowed, but the difference was that there was a soft trill at the end. However, this Lightning Cat's current size was more than 4 to 5 times bigger than the Eclipse Panthers. Now, with the 3 Eclipse Panthers and the Lightning Cat together, It was more like a big cat bringing along 3 newly born kittens. Yun Yang's eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. The cat had grown bigger, but the panther was still so small. Yun Yang felt that he could go out and brag to someone and make a bet. Do you believe that my cat is 4 to 5 times bigger than a panther? You don't? Let's make a bet? Young master, you're full? I'm full. Yun Yang looked at Lao Mei strangely. He had not realized it, but his eyes widened abruptly. I'm full? Fang Mafei and Lao Mei lowered their heads simultaneously. I'm actually full. Yun Yang continued to be surprised. How much have I eaten? You're full? Both of them were exasperated. Yun Yang, who had checked his condition, went out to practice his martial arts. Only then did he return with a face full of joy. Ah, I'm full. Ah, I'm full. This young master is blessed by the heavens. I'm actually full today. If others had heard this, they might have thought that this fellow had been starving for many years. Who would have known that Yun Yang was actually bursting with contentment? Ever since he was injured, he had developed a problem of gluttony. After breaking through to the second stage of the endless divine art, he had actually recovered so mysteriously. While confirming that his gluttonous habit had been cured, Yun Yang realized something else that surprised him. The fact that his endless divine art could attract mystical beasts could be concealed as long as he did not purposely use his cultivation method to stir up trouble. This situation made Yun Yang heave a huge sigh of relief. It was finally over. Carrying such an uncontrollable superpower was really a source of trouble. There was another thing that surprised Yun Yang. Towering Wind Pavilion was closed. Everyone inside, along with Shui Wuyin, had disappeared without a trace. Shui Wuyin had said that he was leaving. Had he gone home? However, Yun Yang had a feeling that there was a reason for this. He seemed to feel the 2 pairs of eyes that were staring at him, filled with endless suspicion. Yun Yang had a feeling that Shui Wuyin would never disappear, nor would he leave. He had probably been waiting for his next move. It looked like he had to explain it clearly when they met again. Otherwise, this would be a huge misunderstanding. However, how was he going to explain it? Once he tried to explain, it would involve everything. Even Yun Yang felt a headache coming on. Tiantang City had been unusually quiet for more than 10 days, so quiet that Yun Yang was not used to it. No one from Sira's house was looking for trouble. The Board of Justice was still in a terrible predicament, searching for clues but to no avail. The 3 noble families had finally stopped making a fuss in the Board of Justice, but it was a matter of opinion as to how angry they were. They had begun to wreak havoc in the residence of Crown Prince. Hand over Shui Yuehan. Where could the Crown Prince go to hand over Shui Yuehan? They were truly in a terrible predicament. Encountering these 3 fellows who were relentless, unreasonable, and unscrupulous, it was a huge headache. All in all, the capital seemed to have returned to its usual state. However, Yun Yang could feel the prelude of a storm. The undercurrents of the past had all disappeared in an instant. Yun Yang had secretly activated the 9 Heavens Dictum's men to pay attention to these movements but to no avail. This is not a good thing. Yun Yang's vigilance had risen to the highest point. There must be something wrong when something was out of the ordinary. It's probably because the act of Shui Yuehan and Fu Guansan escaping from the prison was too obvious. The 4 Seasons Tower must be investigating this as well. Although they can't be sure where Shui Yuehan has gone to, they have a better understanding of Shui Yuehan's background. So, they'll realize it one day. Besides, they won't give up on the matter here. Yun Yang thought to himself, as long as there are still people from the 9 Supremes alive, as long as there's a possibility that they're still alive, they'll never give up. Other than dealing with the 4 Seasons Tower's reaction, Yun Yang had another matter to attend to. Tai Zheng had returned. The first thing this legendary marshal had done after defending the Fortress of Resilience and rebuilding it was to cause a great disaster. Tai Zheng had massacred the residents of East Defense's men until their blood flowed like a river. The reason was treason. The incident had stirred up an uproar. In the end, it was suppressed by the alliance of His Majesty the Emperor and a few highly respected elders. There was a reason why Tai Zheng would do so, or rather, he dared to do so. As a famed general, his retreat had been ambushed during the battle and he was completely defenseless. To Tai Zheng, this was no doubt a great humiliation. Even though the opponent was Han Sanhe, Tai Zheng would not admit defeat. He was not that stupid. Therefore, after the battle, Tai Zheng's meticulous investigation finally found out that the incident was related to the residents of East Defense. Tai Zheng had his reasons, but he had no evidence, at least no concrete evidence. Actually, it was normal that he had no evidence. Since the other party had decided to do something that was no different from treason, there would not be any evidence left behind. Therefore, Tai Zheng had raised his butcher's knife after half a month of hesitation and helplessness. He might as well not argue with reason and be unreasonable for once. Even if I have my head chopped off, I won't let a traitor like this live. The residents of East Defense was massacred. Once the news spread, the censors went wild with accusations. Even His Majesty the Emperor was troubled. Why did you kill so many officials of the imperial court? Because they betrayed the country. Do you have evidence? Is the evidence irrefutable? No. If you don't, then you're a traitor acting recklessly, deceiving the emperor and ignoring the nation's law. You've committed a heinous crime. I have evidence. What evidence? When Han Sanha was fighting me, he could actually send his army to ambush my retreat and the point of entry was precise. It's impossible if there wasn't a traitor. What kind of evidence is this? This is just your speculation. This is irrefutable evidence. You're being unreasonable. This is the evidence. Indeed, in the eyes of the military, this matter was irrefutable evidence. Irrefutable evidence. In terms of war, it was still understandable if the infantry had ambushed their retreat. After all, the infantry had many ways to break up and sneak in before quickly regrouping. They could even disguise themselves. Now, however, their retreat had been ambushed by 30,000 cavalrymen. That was an absurd claim. Even a deputy general would not commit such an idiotic mistake, let alone a famous general like Tai Zheng. There must be a reason for it to happen. If they found out that this matter was related to the residents of East Defense, then it was definitely related. In other words, the massacre this time was definitely not a mistake. Even old Marshal Qiu Jianhan and Leng Daoyin dared to use their heads as a guarantee. However, in the eyes of the government, the military was obviously finding excuses for their own failure. Without evidence, how dare you kill so brazenly? Just based on your empty words and white teeth to make a guarantee, that's enough? Do you think it's over? Then we'll call you traitors. What then? Because of this, the entire imperial court of Yutong was in an uproar. Both the military and the government had almost rolled up their sleeves to fight in court. After a bout of bickering, the matter finally came to an end. The military of course wanted to protect Tai Zheng. His Majesty the Emperor did not intend to do anything to Tai Zheng. After all, he had just made a great contribution. Most importantly, the military did not think that Tai Zheng's actions were wrong. The government was extremely disgusted by this and retorted. That was why there were so many bickering. His Majesty the Emperor, who was caught in the middle, had fined Tai Zheng 2 years of his salary to end the matter. Indeed, Tai Zheng was punished. This was something the government was happy to see. At least, he was not completely unpunished. Tai Zheng was not convicted, he was only fined. It was as if he was innocent. This was the military's understanding. Now, this menace was finally coming back. He was coming back to get married. On my wedding day, all my brothers, dead or alive, shall have a goblet of wedding wine. These were Tai Zheng's exact words. On the day the war ended, Tai Zheng had made his vow. I don't have the money, I can't have a pot for everyone but a goblet for everyone. I'll do it even if I have to go bankrupt. Even if I have to repay my debt for the rest of my life for this wedding wine, this goblet of wine must be toasted. Tai Zheng's words echoed throughout the entire empire of Yutong. Forget about the armies from the south, and north, just Tai Zheng's eastern army alone had a head count of 500,000. If the brothers who had died in battle, the remaining troops who had participated in the war, the logistical support, the transportation of supplies. I, Tai Zheng, can still afford to treat you to this wine. The 36 guards by his side were also discussing in secret. How much can you gather? Less than 10,000. I will think of a way to get to 10,000. I will definitely get to 10,000. My family is rich. I can take out 100,000. If I clench my teeth and squeeze, I can take out 120,000. I'm sure that's the amount. I'm ashamed. All these years, I've thrown everything away. I only have 100 silver taels on me now. I'll think of a way to borrow some money from someone. Is it possible for me to gather 5,000 silver taels? Damn you, Wu Lauer, you actually don't save up money at such a crucial time. I'm even poorer than second brother Wu here. Out of the 36 guards, 27 of them were paupers. They were truly powerless even though they had the heart. For a moment, the brothers looked at each other. The captain scolded them exasperatedly. You bunch of bastards, you're all F*** king rich all the time. Why are all of you so cowardly when it comes to serious matters? 27 of them hung their heads low, their faces full of misery. It was true that a single copper coin could bring down a hero. The saying did not lie. It's mainly because we're at war every day. There are 27 of us, we don't have wives or children. Both our parents are dead, there's no one at home. What do we need money for? We can't wait to spend it all in the afternoon if we have the money this morning. What if we die one day and we don't have the money to spend? How pitiful would that be? I didn't spend it indiscriminately, but once I got the money, I quickly gave it to the families of my fallen brothers. Who would have thought that this would happen? The brothers looked at each other and heaved a long sigh. No matter what, the marshal is getting married. The wedding banquet must be done beautifully. Ostentatious. The captain's eyes were red. Why don't all of you rob the rich to give to the poor? They were really desperate now, to the point of robbing the rich to give to the poor. No one is allowed to go. Tai Zheng's voice was forced to be cold. All of you have fought so hard to keep your lives on the battlefield, yet you can't wait to throw your lives away? No one needs to say anything. Your father has money. A wedding banquet won't make your father poor. Keep your money. Those who don't have a wife, find a wife quickly, keep your roots. Tai Zheng's expression was dark. Why are you spending it on your father? Even if your father is in debt, I'm still a man with a wife. You bunch of single dogs, don't get involved. How could the 36 personal guards not know their own great general's family background? They all lowered their heads and were dispirited and dispirited. What are you guys pretending to be? Tiantang City is right in front of us. Tai Zheng warned in a low voice, we're the meritorious officials, we're the heroes. All of you, show me your vigor. Look at all of you looking so unlucky. The 36 men answered and rubbed their faces with their hands, rubbing them until they glowed and looked refreshed. He then tidied up his clothes and even brushed his warhorse. Only then did he gallop forward valiantly and energetically. They had just passed by a forest. Suddenly a gust of wind blew. A gust of wind blew and countless leaves rustled, forming a long dragon in front of the cavalry. Stop. Tai Zheng reined in his horse, the 36 men behind him stopped at the same time. A voice came from the forest, Marshal Tai, since you're here, why don't we have a chat in the forest? The voice was gentle and elegant. Tai Zheng said, who are you? Since you wish to meet me, why do you have to hide like this? The voice replied, don't worry, we're friends. Friends? Tai Zheng sneered. Why don't I remember having such a shameful friend like you? As he spoke, his hand was already gripping the hilt of his sword. Behind him, the 36 cavalrymen had their sabers in their hands, their arrows nocked. The person in the forest was silent for a moment before he said, it's fine if you don't come in. Suddenly, a bundle fell to the ground with a thud. The gentle voice said, Marshal Tai, this is my family's Supreme Lord's wedding gift to Marshal Tai. Before the words could echo in the air, the silhouette on the other side had already disappeared without a trace. Wedding gift? Tai Zheng looked at the red bundle on the road, his gaze suspicious. He urged his horse over and carefully flipped through the bundle with his 25-feet-long spear. In the next moment, Tai Zheng's face was flushed, his entire body trembling with excitement as he sprung up and called out loudly, Your Honor! Stay. Brother! Brother, stay. However, no one in the forest answered him. Tai Zheng leaped into the forest with a swoosh, not caring if there was an ambush in the forest at this moment. He made a few rounds in the forest and only saw a rock in the middle that was clean, as if someone had just sat on it. Tai Zheng walked over in agitation, only to see a piece of paper pressed on the rock with a sentence written on it. Congratulations to Brother Tai for your wedding. May you live in bliss for 100 years and have a son soon. The wedding wine is on me. It was a short sentence. However, there was a signature of a ball of flame. 9 stars surround and guard, the flame burns. At this moment, Tai Zheng was shaking from head to toe. The regret he felt was indescribable and overwhelming. Why didn't he come in just now? Why was he so paranoid? Marshal. The captain of the Janissaries rushed in hastily. Marshal. There are 12 million silver taels in this bundle. This. He was agitated, excited, and sighing. His own family knew him best. With the marshal's temper, he would never accept such a large sum of money that had fallen out of nowhere. Accept it. Tai Zheng exhaled in exasperation. Yes, I will send it back now. The captain's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Accept it? F***CK, did the marshal say it wrongly or did I hear it wrongly? We brothers have sincerely contributed money to the marshal but were rejected by the marshal. Why did he accept it now? What happened to family? What happened to brothers? Was the little boat of brothers going to capsize? This is the wedding gift from the 9 lords. He said that he will pay for the wedding wine. Tai Zheng smiled bitterly. I can reject the world, reject his majesty, but the 9 lords' money I can't. His words made the captain of the Janissaries tremble in agitation. 9 lords. Chapter 107. Tai Zheng's wedding was being prepared in full swing. This wedding had become the biggest event of the nation's military. No one had expected that a general's wedding would become a wedding without precedent in the Empire of Yutong because of a seemingly absurd and idiotic promise. No wedding could be grander than this one. There was no other wedding that was more burdened than Tai Zheng's wedding. The 20th of October. Tai Zheng's wedding. There were still 2.5 months from now, but this impending wedding had shaken the entire continent. All the brothers who were alive and those who had died in the war were celebrating and drinking together. The entire Empire of Yutong's military felt their backs straighter as they walked on the streets. Not only the Empire of Yutong, this news made all the soldiers in the eastern continent feel their blood boiling. Diyuan, Qianxi, and the other empires' board of war and generals had sent letters of request. Can the enemies of the battlefield have a drink? Even the Empire of Dongxuan's board of war, which had just fought a war, had Han Sanhe's handwritten letters sent from miles away. Congratulations to the soldiers. Can the general's wedding have a drink? The Empire of Yutong's imperial court was in a heated debate regarding this matter. The civil officials' understanding was that Tai Zheng was playing to the gallery, creating trouble out of nothing to buy people's hearts. Look, even the enemy's generals wanted to have a drink. What was this all about? Many of the more observant people were even more certain that the drinking was an excuse and that the real motive was to spy on the military. Since there were such concerns, this absurd farce should be stopped. At the very least, people from other countries should be prevented from participating. Unexpectedly, the Empire of Yutong's Emperor, Yu Peiza, was exceptionally tough this time, going against the majority's wishes and issuing a letter of credence of peace. 7 heroes of 5 empires, no war before the new year. Gentlemen's agreement, there is wine in peace. Can we sign it? The emperors of the empires responded immediately to the letter of credence. No war before the new year. The letter of credence of peace was announced to the world. The people of the entire eastern continent knew about it. All the famed generals of the entire eastern continent would gather in Tiantang City to attend Tai Zheng's wedding and drink a cup of brotherhood wine together. However, time was running out. After all, there were only 2.5 months left. Tiantang City was bustling with activity. Some of the generals who had a long journey had already started to depart from their respective countries. Not for anything else but for his brothers on the battlefield. Regardless of friend or foe, they were all heroic souls. It was the common wish of all soldiers to invite their fallen brothers to their wedding. However, this wish was an extravagant hope. At least in his own country, this wish could not be fulfilled. There was no need to talk about ordinary generals, and it was even more impossible to mess with high-ranking generals. Even if he wanted to do it, the sovereign would be suspicious. You invited so many people to your wedding, what are you trying to do by doing such a thing? Win the hearts of the people? His achievements were already enough to shock the Lord. If he were to do something like this, his head would truly roll on the ground. It would be a lifelong regret if he couldn't do it himself. However, since someone else was doing it, this rare opportunity finally presented itself. Then, no matter how far away he was, even if it was an enemy country, he would do it. I want to go too. Many generals felt their blood boiling. I'm going to ask for a cup of wine for my fallen brothers. Even if it was the enemy's wedding wine, this cup of wine belonged to the soldiers of the world. Even if I die in Yutong because of this, it's worth it to be able to drink this wine. No one would have thought that what seemed like a farce in the eyes of the literati, a mere soldier's wedding, would actually become a grand event attended by the entire continent's military. It was unprecedentedly grand, a grand event of the military. No, not only was this grand and unprecedented, it would be difficult for anyone to compare to it in the future. Yun Yang sat quietly under the flower canopy, paying attention to the information coming from all directions. He was not confident in the enemy's inexplicable hibernation. They had actually retreated after missing their target. This was not in line with the Four Seasons Tower style. However, Yun Yang also believed that if the enemy were to strike again, it would be a thunderous blow. The enemy could already confirm that there were still people alive in the 9 Supremes. As long as there were still people alive in the 9 Supremes, the enemy would never give up. In the future they would only employ a more rigorous and terrifying plan to target them. The forces of the four noble families of North, South, East, and West had left Tiantang City quietly. In spite of this, the four noble young masters of spring, summer, autumn, and winter insisted on staying in Tiantang City. Other than finding trouble with the Crown Prince's residence, they often gathered at Sira's house. Qiu Yunsan had also been released from his house arrest and joined in. He was brutally beaten by Dong Qianling, who pointed at his nose and warned, "I'll skin you alive if you dare to hit on my sister again." Qiu Yunsan was as docile as a child. "Of course. I wouldn't dare even if you begged me to hit on her. I'm still limping now." "Oh, that beating?" Qiu Yunsan shuddered at the thought of it, fear creeping onto his face. "Have you seen a rainstorm before?" The other three popinjays laughed, taking pleasure in his misfortune. "Oh right, Dong Tianling, where's the fellow who was with you that day?" Chun Wanfeng fanned himself with a green fan. If it were not for the green bamboo branch on his head, he would have looked rather elegant. "Why haven't I seen him for a few days?" "What fellow?" Dong Tianling said unhappily, "That's my boss." "Your boss?" the three popinjays exclaimed at the same time. Dong Tianling was instantly alerted, realizing that he had let the cat out of the bag. He quickly corrected himself, "Yes, my boss doesn't know him." Yes, that's right. We understand you." The three popinjays nodded solemnly. On the other side, Yun Zuyu was smiling. With Yun Zuyu's knowledge, how could she not see that these fellows were the amulets that Yun Yang had found for her? With these fellows here, it was basically equivalent to the four noble families holding the fort here. Who would dare to provoke such a force? Yun Yang had put in a lot of effort for her sake. Therefore Yun Zuyu blended in with these four fellows without hesitation, calling them brothers. She would drink and have fun for free. This action made Dong Tianling and the rest feel flattered. While they felt honored, they were also ashamed, feeling that they owed this new sister too much. Now, hearing Dong Tianling and the rest talk about Yun Yang, Yun Zuyu's eyes darted around and said, "Young Master Chun is right. Young Master Yun hasn't come for many days. However, this is normal. He rarely comes in the past. After all, he's the young master of Marquis Yun's family, he must be very busy." The young master of Marquis Yun's family? Qiu Yunsan, Xia Bingchuan and Chun Wanfeng's eyes shone. Dong Tianling looked bitter. He did not expect Yun Zuyu to reveal Yun Yang's identity just like that. He could no longer hide it. There was a 99% chance that he would not be able to enjoy the benefits alone. What should he do? Dong Tianling's eyes darted around as he thought of a countermeasure. Chun, Xia, and Qiu's eyes darted around as well, thinking that the mysterious person who had secretly helped Dong Tianling must be this young master Yun Yang. Then what method should I use to rope in such a strong helper? Yun Zuyu's red lips took a sip of wine, a gentle smile on her face. "Little brother, you can benefit from both sides of the four of them. I'll make sure you take advantage of them." All right. I'll invite our boss over. Let's drink together." Dong Tianling said, "Wait here." The three of them were reluctant. "What are you talking about? Your boss is still our boss. How can you go alone? Not only are you not giving boss face, you're also not giving us face. Yes, we're all brothers. Your boss is my boss? What do you mean, Dong Tianling? Are you trying to raise your own status?" "That's right. Dong Tianling is obviously trying to drive a wedge between our relationship with our boss. If he goes alone, he might say something bad about us in front of our boss." Chapter 108. Boss. Dong Tianling sprung up. "The three of them are scolding you. All three of them aren't good people. You have to be careful when you interact with them, boss. Don't be fooled by these despicable people, they—" "Dong Tianling. You bastard." Boss. I wasn't talking about you just now. I'm Chun Wanfeng, do you know me, boss?" "It's okay if you don't, we'll get to know each other after today. You'll be my boss for life from now on." Chun Wanfeng's face was full of flattery as he leaned forward like a lapdog, his flattery endless like a torrential river. "Boss. My dear boss." Xia Bingchuan was overwhelmed with emotion, tears welling up in his eyes as if he was about to cry. "I finally found you. From today onwards I, Xia Bingchuan, will be at your beck and call, even if I have to die 1,000 times." Boss. Qiu Yunsan's leg was still limping as he rushed forward. "Boss. I've finally seen you." "Sob, boss, it's a pity that my leg was almost broken just to see you. It's still not healed yet. From now on, boss, I'll never go west if you ask me to. I'll never scold a chicken if you ask me to beat a dog." The scene of the three of them rushing forward together was a stunning one. At least Yun-yang felt that he was shocked. What was going on? What was going on? He had clearly heard these people talking about the person who was with Dong Tianling the other day. Why did the scene change in the blink of an eye? However, Yun-yang's attention was then drawn to another matter. You're Chiu Yun-san? Yun-yang scanned Chiu Yun-san from head to toe, his gaze unfriendly. If it were not for this child's trouble, would he be so passive now? I'm Chiu Yun-san. Chiu Yun-san was baffled. Why does boss look like he doesn't welcome me? Boss, you can call me Little Chiu or Little Sanshan. Anything works? Your tone scares me, I've just been beaten up. Chiu Yun-san rolled up his trouser leg, acting pitiful as he pointed. Boss, look, my leg is still swollen. Serves you right. Yun-yang snorted. Who asked you to be so blind? This is only the first time. What if you say you want to take Yun Zuyu as a concubine again tonight? Chiu Yun-san wailed. Boss, I don't dare to do it anymore. It's all Manager Mi's fault, it's none of my business. How is it none of your business? If you weren't stupid, there wouldn't be such a mess. Yun-yang had already sat down. You jumped right into the pit that someone dug. It's fortunate that it's your uncle. Otherwise you, Chiu Yun-san, would be dead this time. Chiu Yun-san's expression turned ferocious. That's right. My uncle told me about this as well. Motherf asterisk her. This me guy is too much. This matter is definitely not over. So? Yun-yang saw that he was almost done with his provocation, so he decided to add one last flame. Let's not talk about whether or not I'm worthy to be your boss. However, I don't want to have a little brother like you who was almost played to death. Yun-yang smiled. Who knows when I'll be dragged down by you. It's better not to have a follower like this. Yun-yang's gaze swept across Dong Tianling. Dong Tianling was filled with righteous indignation. That's right. Look at the mess you've caused. Not only have you been used, you've actually dragged the three of us into this as well. We've been sent to the Board of Justice's prison to spend the night. What an undeserved calamity. If it weren't for you, would our brothers have fought so hard? We've been dragged down by you enough. Don't drag our boss down anymore. Chun Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan were not good at other things, but when it came to adding insult to injury, they were absolutely top-notch. You're right. I've never heard Dong Tianling say something so reasonable. That's right. Old Chiu, really, you've been like a jinx recently. Look at how you've caused Sister Yu. Look at how you've caused us. Look at how you've caused my face to grow pockmarks. Maybe we lost to Dong Tianling some time ago because of him. When have we ever lost before? As they spoke, the three of them suddenly stopped. Chun Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan smacked their lips at the same time. This F*King makes a F*King lot of sense. Chiu Yun-san was extremely miserable when he heard them and said angrily, just you wait and see. If I don't mess with that fellow within 3 months, Dong Tianling said lightly. Oh, a self-imposed time limit of 3 months? What a short time, it'll pass in the blink of an eye. Alright, I'll make an oath as well. If I'm not invincible in the world within 3,000 years, I'll die. I swear to the heavens. Ha! Xia Bingchuan and Chun Wanfeng guffawed. If I don't die within 3,000 years, I'll hang myself. If I can't pee on the sun once in 30,000 years, I'll kill myself. Ah! Chiu Yun-san was trembling all over, his face green with anger. Just you wait and see. 3 days. If I don't make this bastard pay within these 3 days, my surname isn't Chiu. Yun-yang quickly tried to smooth things over. Everyone was just joking, why are you so serious? Come, let's drink. Seeing that their boss had stepped in to smooth things over, the group beamed with joy and began toasting him continuously. Yun-yang emptied his goblet, instantly becoming intimate with each other, calling each other brothers. Only Chiu Yun-san was still livid, unable to find a way out of the situation. He was being ridiculed too harshly. Even when he occasionally forced a smile and drank a goblet of wine with Yun-yang, he would start sulking again when he turned around. After a long while, in the heat of the wine, pop! Chiu Yun-san threw the goblet onto the ground abruptly, shattering it into pieces. With bloodshot eyes he said, how dare he scheme against me? I must kill that bastard. This sudden sentence caused everyone to jump in fright. This was definitely an extraordinary character who could quickly stand firm and stir up trouble or even control the situation at any time, any place and any environment. Was there such a powerful character among the 9 supreme subordinates? If there was, why had Flame never told me about it? I've been studying something during this period of time, Yun-yang said. What is it? Dong Qianling and the other two asked at the same time. Dong Qianling had long been loyal to Yun Yang, but Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan felt that Yun Yang was a good person after this encounter, someone worth befriending. Frank, passionate, easy to make friends, forthright, loyal and considerate of others. His demeanor was impeccable, and his elegance was even more graceful. He even had a bit of the rascality that rich young masters liked the most. Yes, he was a person who could mess around with his own people, but was completely unreasonable towards outsiders, just like me. Therefore, in a very short period of time, these two rich playboys went from wanting to make friends with each other. This was an extremely significant change in their mental journey. Yun Yang continued, is it possible for mystical beasts to break through another layer of their predetermined foundation, or rather, their inherent shackles, to reach a higher level? Yun Yang's words were abrupt, but the three popinjays' eyes widened at the same time. Chapter 109. What did you say? Dong Qianling and the other two stuttered. I don't know if the noble families have other secret methods, but personally, I think there's such a possibility. Yun Yang said, do you still remember that double-headed lion of yours? How was it? It worked after my training, didn't it? Yes, it worked. Dong Qianling was rather guilty as he looked at Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan awkwardly. Chen and Xia snorted angrily at the same time before looking at Yun Yang fervently. Actually, the method of training the double-headed lion was only limited to raising its spirituality and breaking through its original habits and habitual actions. Although its ability has increased, it hasn't touched upon the limit of the mystical beast's innate talent. I'm still in the process of figuring out how to break through the limit. Actually, even if I were to succeed, I might not be able to improve much. Yun Yang knew very well that a moment of congeniality was not a long-term solution when he was with these young masters of noble families. These four people did not seem to have any ulterior motives, but Yun Yang knew very well that as long as they were sent by the four noble families and could roam the martial world on their own, how could they be fools? These fellows might look gullible, but if he really thought so, he would be the biggest fool. If he was useful and they wanted to befriend him, they would have all sorts of tricks up their sleeves. However, if he was useless, then they would have all sorts of tricks up their sleeves as well. It was not impossible for them to betray him when it came to benefits. On the other hand, as long as he could provide them with a certain amount of benefits, it would not be difficult for him to keep his position as the boss and even subdue them completely. However, this benefit had to be something they could not refuse and something they could not do themselves. Dong Qianling asked impatiently, how much can it improve? Chen Wanfeng and Xia Bingchuan's eyes were burning as well, even their breaths were held. I dare not say for sure now. Probably. Yun Yang said, I can only raise it from beginner level to pinnacle. It's still impossible to skip levels. For example, raising a beginner 7th level mystical beast to 7th level pinnacle. Yun Yang nodded, deep in thought. Dong Qianling was trembling with excitement. What if it's a beginner 9th level mystical beast? Yun Yang replied, it's the same principle. Elevating to the pinnacle of the 9th level, what about it? He lifted his head and looked at Dong Qianling in surprise. Don't tell me you don't even know how to deduce such an analogy? He's an idiot. Chen Wanfeng was so agitated that his teeth were chattering. He moved closer and asked, Boss, are you sure you can really raise a beginner 9th level mystical beast to the peak of 9th level? Yun Yang was taken aback when he heard the question. He thought about it for a moment and said, your question is on point. There really isn't such an absolute certainty right now. However, I'm currently thinking of perfecting my research step by step. So far I've succeeded a little bit. The trio's eyes shone even brighter. However, to cultivate mystical beasts and break through their own shackles, we must start from the cub and conduct targeted training in all aspects. Yun Yang said seriously, otherwise the hope is slim. Of course. The three of them nodded at the same time like chickens pecking at rice. Everyone's hearts were already filled with hope. What was the difference between a 9th level beginner stage mystical beast and a 9th level peak mystical beast? According to the most conservative theory, a 9th level peak mystical beast could easily kill 10 9th level beginner stage mystical beasts. Furthermore, the 9th level peak mystical beast might not even be injured after this battle. It would only be slightly tired at most. This was the difference between the two. It was like heaven and earth, a world apart. Thinking back to the rise of the Shiman family among the four noble families of the East, South, West, and North, it was because their old ancestor possessed a 9th level pinnacle mystical beast that allowed them to charge forward step by step. Although the Shiman family had always proclaimed that it was a 9th-level peak mystical beast, who among the 8 noble families did not know the truth? If they could have a 9th-level peak mystical beast, for a moment the 3 of them were like ants on a hot pan. They had to let the family know about this as soon as possible so that they could get their hands on a 9th-level mystical beast's cub at all costs. If I had. Dong Qianling was the most impatient. A 9th-level beginner stage mystical beast. Boss, can you? His smile was filled with ingratiation. It was unprecedentedly bright. Yun Yang rolled his eyes and said, "Can you not jump to conclusions based on hearsay? It's true that my research has some achievements, but can you not treat me like a god? Do you think it's easy to cultivate mystical beasts? This includes a lot of conditions, including profound crystals, spirit jades, heavenly materials and earthly treasures, and a large amount of investment. Most importantly, I'm still in the groping stage. Do you think high-level profound beasts are so easy to get, that you can get them just because you want them? But then again, if you're able to gather all the conditions, we'll settle the accounts and discuss the conditions. It's not impossible to help you once." Yin Yang sighed. "We're all brothers. Do you call me boss for no reason? However, there's something I have to make clear. If you let others know about this, I'll never have a day of peace ever again. We'll never let anyone know." The 3 of them swore together, each of them overjoyed. Boss had said, "Do you call me boss for no reason?" He had said all of you and not you. This meant that all of them had a share. Aha, this is great. Who would be so foolish as to spread the news? Wouldn't it be great to make a fortune in silence? I say, all of you should be more united in the future. Yun Yang took the opportunity to put on the airs of a boss and lectured, "The 4 noble families are of the same breath and branch. Chiao Yun-san has been set up, but all of you are gloating over his misfortune. This isn't right. If so, will all of you be the same when I'm set up in the future?" "Boss, we're wrong. This is our fault. There won't be a next time." Dong Qianling, Chun Wanfeng, and Xia Bingchuan sincerely reflected at the same time. "We'll be united and friendly. If anything happens to boss, we won't hesitate to climb a mountain of swords or dive into a sea of flames. Stop. Stop trying to get close to me." Yun Yang rolled his eyes and waved his hand. "I know all of you are anxious. Quickly send the message to your families. Come back for a drink after you're done. Don't say that I, the boss, am heartless." "Thank you, boss." Ah. The 3 of them sprung up. With a swoosh, they disappeared without a trace. Yun Yang turned to look at Yun Zuyu. Yun Zuyu's heart skipped a beat. "Could it be, young brother, do you have something to tell me?" Yun Zuyu asked anxiously. "It's nothing much. Sister-in-law, you don't have to be so careful." Yun Yang smiled easily. Yun Zuyu felt like she had been struck by lightning. Sister-in-law. Yun Yang had been reluctant to call her sister-in-law before this, but now he had called her so naturally. What? Tears welled up in Yun Zuyu's eyes as she trembled in disbelief. "Young brother, what did you call me?" "Sister-in-law." Yun Yang called her name clearly and enunciated each word clearly. 5th brother said, "No matter if he's alive or dead, you're always his wife." Yun Zuyu took 2 rapid breaths. Her jade-like face suddenly flushed red as tears streamed down her cheeks in a stream. She covered her mouth and wiped her tears away with her other hand, but she could not wipe them clean no matter how hard she tried. "This heartless man?" Yun Zuyu's voice was sobbing. "He's finally enlightened." Yun Yang smiled. "Still, I can only call you Sister Yu in front of others. I hope sister-in-law will be magnanimous enough to forgive me." Yun Yang smiled. "Still, I can only call you Sister Yu in front of others. I hope sister-in-law is magnanimous enough to forgive me." Yun Zuyu's face glowed as she said, "This is how it should be. Besides, you're causing me trouble by calling me sister-in-law in front of others." It was obvious that she was trying to enlighten Yun Yang. Yun Zuyu wished that everyone in the world would know that she was her sister-in-law. "I, Yun Zuyu, am also someone with a husband." "Where is he now?" Yun Zuyu was laughing and crying at the same time as she asked softly while wiping her tears. "He can't come back for now," Yun Yang said carefully. "Maybe a very long time. I'll wait no matter how long it takes." Yun Zuyu raised her hand to stop Yun Yang from continuing. She said seriously, "As long as I have this sentence, it's enough. Even if I, Yun Zuyu, have to wait for a lifetime until I become a pile of dirt, I'll wait." Yun Yang looked at her in a daze and sighed softly in his heart. Yun Zuyu quickly collected herself and wiped away her tears. She actually raised a goblet of wine and said, "Brother, come, let us have a drink. Let us celebrate. That heartless fellow, Humph, has finally become a man today." Yunyang did not know whether to laugh or cry. If his fifth brother Supreme Flame, who had always been hot-tempered, were to really hear this comment, what kind of reaction would he have? Yun Zuiyu had already emptied her goblet. Her eyes were gleaming as she said flirtatiously, "Young brother, do you know? Today is the happiest, most comfortable, and most satisfying cup of wine I've ever had in so many years. From now on this body has a burden. From now on this love has a burden. From now on this heart belongs to someone." Yun Zuyu chuckled, her eyes misty as she said, "From now on, I have no regrets in this life." Yun Yang could only feel a wave of suppressed air rushing up his chest, almost blocking his throat. He coughed and said, "I'm very happy too." He raised his goblet and emptied it in one gulp, only to feel that this goblet of wine was sour, sweet, bitter, and spicy. Dong Qianling and the other two came back very quickly and happily toasted each other, determined to drink until they were drunk. Yun Zuyu excused herself from staying up late and went back to rest. Her footsteps when she walked out were light and brisk. There was even the liveliness of a young girl. Yun Yang could even hear that Yun Zuyu could not help but let out a carefree chuckle when she walked out of the room. However, this carefree chuckle was like a sharp needle that pierced into Yun Yang's heart. What would happen in the future? Yun Yang was at a loss now. He felt that he was like a cobbler who was working in vain, trying desperately to mend the top of a net that had a hole in the bottom. It was like a lie that could not withstand any scrutiny. Yun Yang and the other three chatted as they drank. Other than Yun Yang, who seemed to be troubled and seemed to be fine on the surface, the other three looked rather nervous, as if they were waiting for something. Finally, there was a loud bang. A person rushed in. Chapter 110. What is it? Dong Qianling's expression tightened. Young Master Chiu he. Young Master Chiu? The guard was out of breath. He has captured everyone in the Mi family's alley. He's parading them through the streets in the middle of the night, heading towards the inn. Dong Qianling and the other two men sucked in a breath of cold air as if they had a toothache. The faces of the three of them twitched. Chiu Yunsan's eldest young Master Chiu's actions were swift indeed. He had actually carried out his revenge in such a short period of time. He had directly captured all of Keeper Mi's family members. However, this incident was about to become an earth-shattering event. That shopkeeper Mi was no ordinary merchant. He was a true blue minister of the imperial household. He was a high-ranking figure who could easily reach the ears of the emperor. You're just a young master of a martial world family, how could you openly capture the entire family? What kind of explanation is that? No matter how powerful the Chiu family was, transcending the laws of the world, it was still a little too much for you to do this in someone else's capital city. It was unjustifiable. Besides, this fellow had an uncle who was the head of the military generals, old Marshal Chiu. He would not be able to explain himself just because of his age. Yun Yang's hand that was holding his wine cup could not help but tremble. I'm still thinking about what you're going to do. I've come up with hundreds and thousands of ingenious plans, but I didn't expect you to use such a direct, unreasonable, simple, violent, and brainless method, big brother. Yun Yang was speechless for a moment. My original intention was only to borrow a knife. You don't have to be so dramatic. This kind of situation, to put it in a sentence that we can all understand, is, I just wanted to borrow a knife but you threw me an atomic bomb. And it's already been ignited. We're in trouble. These three words came out of the four men's mouths at the same time. Let's go over quickly and see if there's any way to turn things around. Dong Qianling sprung up like his but was on fire. If *CK were really dragged down by this jinx this time. My God, please don't kill anyone. If we really do, we're all doomed. The four of them left in a hurry. Yun Yang looked calm on the surface, but his heart was in turmoil. Other than cursing in his heart, he didn't have any other thoughts regarding the behavior of these young masters from aristocratic families. Just as the four of them arrived at the Tower into Heaven Inn, before Chiu Yun-san could be called out, the third party had arrived. The one leading them was old Marshal Chiu. It was obvious that the old man was furious. One could not blame old Marshal Chiu for being angry. As far as the eye could see, the courtyard of the inn where Chiu Yun-san stayed was filled with more than 100 people. These people were the residents of the Mi family alley, all of Keeper Mi's family members. There were also many distant relatives who had been captured and brought here by young Master Chiu. Because they were arrested in the dark of the night, many of them were not even wearing clothes. They were only wrapped in a bedsheet, and their faces were filled with terror as they shivered and were at a loss of what to do. Since you dared to trick me, you'll have to pay the price. Chiu Yun-san's face was filled with murderous intent, the veins on his neck bulging. I don't care if you're the King Minister of Household Affairs or Minister of Household Affairs. How dare you plot against your father? If that thing with no bottom doesn't come and give your father an explanation before dawn, your father will bury all these people alive. Little bastard. Old Marshal Chiu was enraged as he roared, "Release them immediately." Not releasing. Chiu Yun-san straightened his neck and was equally enraged. Old Marshal Chiu, you're the Marshal of the Empire of Yutong, but today's matter is a personal grudge. There's no room for you to intervene. This child was not even calling him uncle anymore. Old Marshal Chiu was infuriated. His eyes darted left and right looking for a stick. Uncle, are you going to lecture me again? You and I are both descendants of the Chiu family. It's understandable if you lecture your nephew because of this identity. Chiu Yun-san looked into the old marshal's eyes that were spitting fire. But uncle, your identity now is the Marshal of the Empire of Yutong. One is for the country, the other is for the family. Have you forgotten, uncle? Other than plotting against me, the one with the surname Me has also plotted against you. No matter how I put it, uncle, what you do is the Empire of Yutong's business. But how I seek justice is the Chiu family's business. These are two matters that cannot be confused. If I admit to this matter just like this, how can the Chiu family walk the martial world with dignity in the future? Are we going to admit it when we know that we've been set up and set up? In that case, what if we are set up by others again in the future? What will we do then? Will we be dealt with the same way? Old Marshal Chiu could not help being stunned when he heard the words, his rage extinguished. The cause of this matter is indeed me being a popinjay. I'm not sensible, I have a childish temper, I'm mischievous. It's my own weakness that caused others to set up this trap. Chiu Yun-san said boldly, I admit to all of the above. I'll ask for forgiveness when I return to the family. However, this is not a reason for the one with the surname Me to set me up. Here my surname is Chiu. Here, no matter how disappointing I am, I'm still a part of the Chiu family and I represent the Chiu family. Setting a trap for me is the same as setting a trap for the Chiu family. The Chiu family will never swallow this humiliation for nothing. This nephew is poor, I can't even afford a maid. It's inevitable that I won't be a good host then. Why don't? This old man is a rough fellow, why would I need a maid to serve me? It's decided then. Chiu Jianhan made the final decision. Yun Yang's mouth hung open helplessly. He had never seen such an unreasonable person. Chiu Jianhan snorted. He had always been paying attention to Yun Yang, but Yun Yang, who was not supposed to be here, was actually here as well on such a special occasion. He could not help but connect the dots. Inexplicably, he felt that Yun Yang was filled with mystery. In spite of this mysterious person was behaving like a popinjay that could not be helped. It was extremely incongruous. As the old marshal hesitated, he suddenly realized that this child's popinjay behavior seemed to only appear in front of him. Your father seems to have been deceived. Chiu Jianhan had even abandoned this old man and started calling himself your father. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that this deceiving fellow was guilty of the most heinous crime. Suddenly there was a commotion in front of them. Silhouettes darted about continuously. It was a group of imperial guards who had rushed over. Yun Yang pursed his lips and said, Old Marshal, Sir Mi is here. Things are getting worse. Dong Qianling and the others grew nervous once more. Chiu Yun-san had been extremely impulsive in this matter. He had captured someone else's family indiscriminately. Even if it was understandable that he had been tricked, he had completely lost this advantage when he had captured someone else's family. As for you, a young master of the Chiu family who was not the direct heir, you had challenged a nation's imperial director in someone else's base camp in Tiantang City. Chapter 111. If Mi Kongquan had entered the Chiu family's territory and entered the martial world, it would not have been difficult for the Chiu family to toy with him to death as long as he had left Tiantang City. However, they were in Tiantang City after all. It would not be difficult for Mi Kongquan to toy with Chiu Yun-san to death as the local tyrant. Groups of imperial guards arrived one after another. Without saying a word, they first occupied the high ground and then began to set up defenses in all directions. They did not interfere with Chiu Yun-san and the others, nor did they save anyone. They only watched the scene unfold. In spite of this, the number of people increased, forming an absolute suppression of power. Old Marshal Chiu's expression grew uglier as he muttered a curse. Damned eunuch, how arrogant. Yun Yang said to Dong Qianling, intentionally or otherwise, Little Lung, how many people have come from your family this time? I'm afraid the situation isn't looking good. The Chiu family is most likely going to suffer a loss. Dong Qianling was already sweating as he said with a dark expression, "Our family has the least people. Other than me there are only 2 guards." Now, Dong Qianling's worry was evident in his words. What should we do? How did things become so serious? Old Marshal Chiu Jinhan's expression had darkened completely. Scuffling footsteps could be heard, as if the soles of their shoes were scraping against the ground with each step as they walked over slowly. The sound was messy, making one's heart flutter. Then 5 silhouettes walked out slowly from the other end of the street. Every one of them was slightly hunched over. Each of them was fair and beardless. Each of them wore a eunuch's uniform. Each of them wore a deadpan expression, their gazes unmoving like zombies. Each of them had a horsetail whisk in their arms. Each of them was walking with their feet splayed out. This group of people had turned the corner of the street in the middle of the night, but it gave everyone a sense of eeriness. The one in the middle was taller than the rest. He was middle-aged, beardless, pale, and muscular. His gaze was colder as well. He seemed to be the leader of the group. However, Yun Yang's gaze fell on the face of the person on his right. Eunuch Wu. Eunuch Wu, whom he had almost killed with a single slap and had half of his teeth knocked out, was also the familiar silhouette who had attempted to assassinate him in front of the residence of Yun. This person had been hiding in the depths of the palace ever since that day. Yun Yang had never had the chance to see him again. This was the first time he had seen this person appear in front of him after the assassination attempt. Using Dong Qianling's body as a cover, Yun Yang observed the eunuch carefully. As far as the eye could see, his footsteps were still weak, his eyes were dull, and his body was not tall and straight. From head to toe, there was still no sign of cultivation. If anyone saw him, they would instantly come to the conclusion that he was a eunuch who had lost his body, a eunuch who did not have many years left to live. In spite of this, Yun Yang noticed something that others would not have noticed. He had knocked out many of his teeth the other day, so this fellow's cheeks should have been deflated. However, they looked full now. It was as if he had never been injured. This was thought-provoking. As if sensing Yun Yang's gaze, Eunuch Wu lifted his head to look in his direction. Seeing Yun Yang who was glaring at him, a deep hatred flashed in his eyes. Young Master Chiu. The eunuch in the middle was Keeper Mi Kongchuan himself. Mi Kongchuan squinted his eyes, his gaze focused on Chiu Yun-san who was in the crowd and said faintly, "We're all friends after all. Isn't it a little too much for you to do this?" Chiu Yun-san was enraged. F*CKU. Is it a little too much for you to set me up? Mi Kongchuan, don't you try this with me. Let me ask you, how do you plan to give me an explanation? Mi Kongchuan narrowed his eyes and said coldly, "I only want to know, what kind of explanation do you want, young Master Chiu?" Chiu Yun-san snorted coldly and said, "Mi Kongchuan, you've set me up and tarnished the Chiu family's reputation. You've even made me fall into your trap and almost lost my reputation. I'm indebted to you for your hospitality. Do I have any other way other than to take your life?" Mi Kongchuan chuckled coldly. "I'm afraid the explanation that young Master Chiu wants isn't easy to ask for." He chuckled coldly. "Young Master Chiu is in Yutong's capital city, right under the emperor's feet, yet you've brazenly kidnapped innocent citizens. You're so brazen, completely disregarding the nation's laws. I wonder how young Master Chiu plans to give the empire of Yutong?" Chiu Yun-san was stunned and said angrily, "Mi Kongchuan, are you going to talk about an explanation with me?" Mi Kongchuan sneered. "Talk about what? I, Mi Kongchuan, am also a citizen of Yutong. How can I allow a lowly person like you to do as you please? Today I'll take you down first and go to the Chiu family to ask for forgiveness from the Chiu family's old patriarch. It's only right that I give an explanation to the old patriarch then." Chiu Yun-san chortled. "Mi Kongchuan, don't you dare." Mi Kongchuan's gaze was vicious. "Young Master Chiu will know whether I dare or not very soon." Seeing that both parties were getting more and that Chiu Yun-san's eyes were spitting fire and he was about to attack, Yun Yang sighed instinctively. Chiu Yun-san was still too young. Even if he had a plan, he was still too impulsive. Mi Kongchuan had been talking about the country of Yutong. Every word he said was righteous. If Chiu Yun-san were to be stubborn and even make the first move, the Chiu family would not be able to say anything even if he were to be killed here today. A sliver of disappointment flashed across old Marshal Chiu Jinhan's eyes. Chiu Yun-san's original intention was to put the matter on the martial world's grudge, and he had used this argument to force old Marshal Chiu to retreat. However, he did not, or rather he did not manage to do so in time. Mi Kongchuan had seized the initiative and caused the subsequent development to change completely. He was still too young, Mi Kongchuan? Old Marshal Chiu said faintly. Old Marshal. Mi Kongchuan bowed respectfully. Although he was the emperor's valet, he knew that if he were to really fight with Chiu Jianhan, he would be the unlucky one. You talk about the righteousness of the nation. This old man would like to ask you, what was the righteousness of the nation when you plotted against Chiu Yunsan? Chiu Jianhan asked, what was the righteousness of the nation when you plotted against Chiu Yunsan? Mi Kongchuan lifted his head abruptly. Old Marshal, it was obvious that Chiu Jianhan did not want to give him time to explain. He cut him off and said, you plotted to drag this old man's wife into this as well. What was the righteousness of the nation? Mi Kongchuan was stunned. Then he looked aggrieved as he said, Old Marshal, I know you're Chiu Yunsan's uncle and Chiu Yunsan is your nephew. But you? Chiu Jianhan frowned and said, this is the empire of Yutong Tiantang City. What do you mean by uncle and nephew? Is this your reason? Or are you saying that this old man is playing favoritism and cheating now? Not only did you not answer this old man's question about the righteousness of the nation, you've even brought the topic to our family. What a beautiful trick you've played. Mi Kongchuan, is this the answer you're giving this old man? Mi Kongchuan said angrily, Old Marshal doesn't care about the thugs who openly threaten and kidnap people. Instead you're pressuring me, a victim. What is the meaning of this? This old man doesn't mean anything. The old marshal pointed at the imperial guards around him and said faintly, you're the major domo of the imperial household, but how can you mobilize so many imperial guards? Where's the warrant to mobilize the troops? Show it to this old man. This old man is very interested to know who has given you such a great authority. The tip of Mi Kongchuan's nose was already sweating as he said in a shrill voice, this major domo has the authority to mobilize the imperial guards to encircle and annihilate the traitors who plot against the palace. Chiu Jianhan pressed on. What a great accusation. May I ask where the palace is? And where is this place? Major domo Mi, your so-called authority can't be used arbitrarily even in the palace. How can it be done unless it's an emergency? Now that you've brought the imperial guards out of the palace and come here with such fanfare, who has given you the authority to do so? This is the nation's military force. The force that guards the palace. It's not a private army that a mere eunuch like you, Mi Kongchuan, a eunuch can command. Chiu Jianhan's tone was stern. If he did not step forward, his nephew would definitely be at a disadvantage. It would be a grievance that he had to keep to himself. It would not be for nothing, but it could very well cost his life. While he could turn the situation around by stepping forward like this, he would definitely offend this person who was close to His Majesty the Emperor. There would be no end to the trouble. Facing old Marshal Chiu's forceful approach, Mi Kongchuan's gaze was filled with resentment. Chiu Jianhan did not speak to Mi Kongchuan anymore but turned to look at the imperial guards on the wall. Which one of you is the leader? Come here. A burly guard leaped down. Old Marshal. Show me the tiger tally that mobilizes you. The old marshal extended his arm and said in an unquestionable tone, let me see who allowed all of you to leave the palace, who signed the order to allow all of you to follow Mi Kongchuan out. The leader of the guards was flushed. No. Their trip this time was purely on their own. How could there be any tiger tally? No. The old marshal's expression turned dangerous. You all came out just like that without any? Your mission is to protect the palace. Protect His Majesty. How can you leave your post without permission? If something happens in the palace, how many heads do you have to bear the responsibility? Even if you don't want your own life, do you want the lives of your family? The leader of the guards was flushed. This humble official, all of you scram back. Chiu Jianhan glared at them. Do you really want this old man to chase all of you away? Go back and be vigilant. If there's a next time, this old man shall report this to His Majesty and punish you severely. I shall exterminate your entire family. Save all of you from risking your lives like this. Yes. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.